Right, so
Oh, here we
are ready to
go. Here we go. Here we
Sorry, guys.
go. Here we go.
Okay, that's your singing has been recorded, Councilmember Lingua. So
There we go.
It is,
Name the tune.
7:38 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting to order. Please all rise if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence or silent prayer as your conscience finds appropriate. Thank you. Please be seated. Members of the council, you have an agenda before you. Are any changes required to that agenda? And does anyone have a stated conflict of interest for any agenda item?
No amendments, no conflicts.
Okay, I will mention that we do have a quorum: Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Foe, Councilmember Lingua, and myself. So that's a slender quorum. Councilmember Mayers had a medical procedure today and is recovering from that and requests that her absence be excused. Councilmember Mejia has indicated that she will be joining us. Her work runs late, so she may be joining us a little bit late. Apparently she is running us a little bit late. And Councilmember Sadiq is overseas. He warned us about this several weeks ago. It'll be the one meeting that he misses. So if there are no amendments to the agenda, no conflicts of interest, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there council discussion of the agenda? Are there public comments on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq, as I said, is overseas. Councilmember Mejia, I expect, but is not here at the time. And Councilmember Mayers is ill and absent. So I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. Let's move on the agenda to the presentation. First presentation is fiscal year 2023 road improvement projects. And I presume that's a staff presentation.
Yes, sir, and thank you. And good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members, members of the community and staff. Jessica, Kim Adams, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, is in the meeting and will need to share her PowerPoint presentation. Okay, I'd like to first reintroduce Kim Adams. She is a senior engineer and division manager with Pannoni. That's one of our town on-call engineering firms. She's going to assist in the presentation of the road improvement projects proposed for fiscal year 2023 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. Staff working with Ms. Adams and members of her team identified 11 roads needing repairs or improvements in the current fiscal year. A number of these roads were rated fair or poor in last year's road condition assessment, but were not included in the CIP for fiscal year 2022 because of budget constraints and because of other roads needing more immediate attention. Several of the other projects in the current list were identified in the field and related to drainage issues, and others were requested by residents and are important for pedestrian safety. Staff with input from Ms. Adams rated the projects priority 1 and 2 based on needs, the cost estimates she provided, and available funding for these improvements. I'd like to turn to Ms. Adams to provide a description of all 11 projects and their rating. Please feel free to ask questions as she describes the scope of service of each project. I'll follow up with some closing comments after her presentation. Kim, and welcome.
Microphone first. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Manager, council members, and everybody. It's great to be presenting to you all again. I've presented a couple of times, so this year I'm going to try to share my screen correctly. There we go. Alrighty. You can see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Alrighty, I'd like to present, again, thank you for having me this evening. I would like to present this year's fiscal year 2023 proposed roadway project. Those of you who are new, the objectives pretty much were to optimize the pavement life throughout the town, you know, by doing the right streets at the right time. And we'd like to maintain and keep up to date the roadway conditions data. Last year was probably 2021 now, we did a roadway assessment using robotics, and it provided roadway conditions data where it ranked the roads from 1 to 5, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst condition. And we were able to look within that program to see which streets needed to be done immediately. Of course, the worst ones were the ones that we definitely addressed most of last year. And then we also included some that were maybe fair or heading in the direction of being poor to try to maximize the funds and take care of the roads so that they wouldn't get any worse or eventually develop to poor condition. So after we got information off of the robotics platform, which told us a lot about what the deterioration was, we did field visit follow-ups. And then we prepared some data sheets with estimates in order to come up with a pretty fair estimate of what we felt that the needs would be based on the distresses. Last year we did probably 12th Street. I don't know, my notes aren't showing up on the side, but I think the 12 here that we did do, including the River Tech corporate lanes, which we did add. This year we had 11 on our list. And Ivy had mentioned some were, because we looked on robotics, went out in the field, so they needed some work, and then others may have been like a call-in, which led us to look at the rest of the roadway or roadways nearby. So our first one that we have worked on, we did this one, looked at this during the summertime actually, and it was based on the report that was previously done by one of your traffic engineers at Mead & Hunt. And it came up with a series of improvements in the Riverdale Park Station area. They were like down in your lower left corner, they recommended some I guess where they have automated tracking speed awareness, road cushions. This presentation, I'm going to probably go over road cushions, speed humps, speed cushions, speed humps, speed bumps, speed tables. So we mentioned those quite a bit. So speed cushions are the ones that do allow emergency vehicles to pass through. This part is level. There were also stop signs. Some were advised to be removed, some relocated, and some new ones. So that was the first street that we had on there. Second was Queensbury Road from US 1 to 43rd Place. I guess a request had come in to include crosswalks at 44th Street And that led us to go ahead and just take a look at the entire limits. I'm not sure if you see my cursor.
Yes.
Okay, so it led us to take a look at the entire roadway because there were different conditions at each intersection. Some intersections had a stop bar, like you see here, but didn't have a crosswalk or handicap ramps for one reason or the other. Some of them didn't have a stop sign at all. So there were different conditions. We went out there, did a quick estimate, and found out that we're about 3 intersections that we could probably do crosswalks and or new handicap ramps. If you look at this ramp across the street, there is some sand and water. So we would want to take care of conditions like that while we're out here. But all in all, we feel that at each intersection, we should be able to get at least one crosswalk in. It'll take a little more investigation. Some of the intersections are skewed. Some of them have poles on the corner that we might have to work around. Some of them have inlets on the corner we might have to work around. So there are a few things that need to be looked at also. The next roadway we had, it was also a request about crosswalks along Queensbury. This is Lafayette, this upper left-hand corner. Lafayette looking towards Queensbury, and the right-hand side is Queensbury looking towards Lafayette. So you can see there's a crosswalk across Lafayette, and then crossing Queensbury. And we looked at this one way early on also, especially with regards to Natoli also. And there's probably a couple of reasons why there aren't crosswalks there, but we do feel that we can get safely across the street. There's going to be a couple of options. We need to investigate a little more again, since your roadways are skewed. So you can have a skewed crosswalk. You might have to push the stop bar back a little bit if you want to put one here, but that would introduce a mid-block crossing, which would need a new ramp and maybe some type of warning signage in the center of the road. So there are a couple of different options that we would take a look at, but generally either way, the estimate's going to be about the same, about $9,000. That would include the crosswalk and handicap ramp improvements.
Okay.
Then we had Queensbury, that entire length of Queensbury. So I guess west of Baltimore Ave, the roadway is all new, and on the new paving kind of continues down to probably Beale Circle, maybe 46, around that area. So that entire length, and it looks like maybe there was some utility work done in the past few years. And so there's random patches. In the center picture, you see a patch. You also see that half of the road is actually repaved. So there may have been more intensive utility work on this side of the road. So there are places along that whole stretch that use some care, especially a couple of intersections like Beale and 46, where we might need to do some intersection-based repairs, some full depth pavement repairs, because it's pretty deteriorated. Has alligator cracking, longitudinal cracking, so quite a few things going on here. So that would go all the way down to Taylor Avenue, where we would kind of fill in the places that weren't done in the last resurfacing, and that would bring the entire roadway up to at least a 4, but probably a 5. There was also some concern about motorists kind of going through this intersection, maybe rolling stops, not even stopping at all, maybe trying to catch the light, or for a number of reasons it could be. And there are several options that can be done here, whether it's a mid-block speed hump, which might not help too much, because after you go to the speed hump, then you could still go on and maybe, not do a complete stop or cause concerns here at that intersection. So there are a couple of other options that we wanted to take a look at, which would be flashing stop signs, raised crosswalks, which you see in the center picture here. Now this is where I get into speed tables and speed humps. So the one at the crosswalk, which this would be raised, And if you can see, the handicap ramp is pretty much almost at level to the raised hump. So that creates kind of a little bump to go over here. In addition to, or not, with the flashing stop sign, it adds a little extra protection. Now, there are also speed tables. Folks come, and a lot of engineers use these terms interchangeably, but so I just wanted to describe which one of them calling which. The speed tables I see down here in the lower right-hand corner is like where the whole intersection would be raised, maybe treated, but that's a little more of an extensive improvement. So at the least, I would call for either the raised crosswalk or a speed hump not too far from the intersection, maybe on both sides of Taylor Avenue, to, you know, a little more awareness in the intersection. Greenway is actually a leftover street from fiscal year 2022. It does have some pavement deterioration, and there's I guess what we would call a walkability that needs to be addressed. There's a sidewalk on the west side, but most of the residents live on the east side of Greenway, so it's just access and walkability that might need to be addressed either in this year or future fiscal year. But the pavement deterioration does include cracks and surface deterioration, some potholes. There are existing speed humps or tables because it's kind of a shortened speed hump. But right before and right after these speed humps, you can see some of the cracking that's there. So that would need to be taken care of in one of the programs. Oliver Street, we did receive notice that there was some standing water. We had roadways that were being resurfaced nearby. And so we took a look at this one, and this led us to look here, and then at the entire intersection, and then up Oliver Street, because creative conditions kind of continue on. This green area that designates the area of roadway that's in good condition, and the yellow area designates area that was in fair condition. So we feel if we can take care of locations that may have distress due to probably poor utility like base repairs. Utilities probably came up, didn't come back the base, and now you have a lot of air-ligated cracking. There's a hole right under this pond and water here. Can't really tell just from looking down in there if it's a cracked pipe or anything like that, but since it hasn't gotten bigger, it's kind of staying consistent. More than likely, it's just because water keeps standing there. So we just like to propose to take care of that entire intersection and then just continue the improvement straight up Oliver Street for resurfacing some base repairs to take care of those poor patches. Riverside Drive is probably the one location that still has that we didn't take care of already, that still has a couple of areas that are designated like 4s and 5s. And that's mostly because the area is just like this. But this loop, this cul-de-sac, it pretty much services the people that are living there. So not a lot of heavy traffic. And when I say heavy, I mean not a lot as in volume, but probably in weight. You know, you have more delivery trucks these days that are coming around, probably looping right around that circle. So this is probably due to that, along with some water that might be discharging from the grass areas adjacent to it. So it's just a combination of things. And eventually it's going to need some base repair and some resurfacing for that loop to kind of match up with the green area so that this whole length would be taken care of. In the estimate, I'm not sure if you have that sheet or not, but I did include a sidewalk. So the sidewalk here is kind of what we call, it needs continuity. Some houses have sidewalk right in front of their house, some of them don't. So you might be able to walk on the sidewalk for a little bit and then might have to go into the street. But there is a park down here to the south that you might benefit with the sidewalk. And like I said, it's pretty much servicing these folks, maybe some folks who might be coming over here and going down to the park. But it would just increase the safety there and keep folks from walking in the street. Somerset Road is around that area of some other improvements that we did. You can, and this is actually from the 2021 pavement assessment, pretty much the whole area is good except for Somerset, where we had a lot of utility work. The roadway is marked again. It looks like for some more utility work coming in. So I would think probably after whatever's getting ready to be done there, that you either require them to do the whole street or we would come back and do the street. And that would take care of this whole block where everything is at least a 4 and above.
Kim, if I could interrupt you for just a moment to talk about what those markings might mean. There's been a sinkhole on that block for as long as I've been with the town, about 3 years, and the county has determined that it is a failed storm drain pipe that's caused that sink and needs to be replaced. I confirmed last week that that work will be within the front of the properties along the section, maybe that entire block, but not in the street. So want them to go ahead of the work that we would do, but ours is some months away. And I think it's scheduled to start fairly soon.
Okay. Oh yeah, so they probably had that the streets marked.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So yeah, that would be good. There may be a couple connections that they have to make at, you said the work. So, okay. Yeah, so that'd be good to wait for all that.
Okay.
I think Taylor and Oglethorpe. Down the street, we had a similar problem with water ponding at both corners. And we did a little regrading of the asphalt. We replaced several sections of the concrete swale here. And from what I can tell, it's not holding hardly as much. It's very flat, but it's not holding as much water as it was. There's been some pretty large storms, but that one seems to be doing okay. This one is not just from rainwater, it's also from a sump pump that continuously runs. So
Yes.
even when it is dry outside, I said yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but and we saw that.
Where it is.
We saw that a couple of years ago even. And yeah, so that runs 24/7. So when it's dry, it's still wet. So I can imagine that causes problems in the winter and everything else. So we had actually prepare preliminary plans for this area already, but yeah, to take care of that before the winter. I don't know if it would be before the winter, but so there won't be too many more bad winters where this might ice up. It would be good to take care of just this one area. And the rest of the street was not bad. Maybe some cracking, could use some crack sealing, but generally our limit of work was just going to the stop bar, kind of cutting down the middle, replacing this deteriorated concrete swale. And because that, one of the things is the paving work is probably only about 2/3 of this price, but because the water constantly flows, we had to do like a pump around where we would catch the water before it gets to the area that we're trying to fix and just kind of pump the water around the area until we're done so that we can keep it dry for at least a day or two. Now River Tech Court, I think this is the last one. We did this as part of our last program, and here's the existing one right in the middle. So we do have some bike symbols, which we call bike gyros, but it has been noticed that we could use some more because it's a long stretch, and so I think we doing about 4 more on each side along this stretch would give a lot more visibility. There are a number of treatments that can be done. I worked on a project recently where you have bollards, and I thought this was a pretty good shot. It looks like a rendering, but that's an actual bollard, and it has rubber curb. There's other options that you may have been seeing around DC, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, that have like a small height curb. Some of them are 3-4 inches tall, but not a full curb, but it does give a full separation. So different types of treatment that you could do here. We pretty much propose this with the bollards and the curb, but some of them are similar in cost either way, whether you paint it the entire length or install the flexible bollard. This type of curb is probably a little more, probably extra $20,000, since we would have to put one of these on both sides also. So there are several options there, and we would probably just have a couple more discussions with Ivy. And but like I said, I think putting in the bollards and the curb would be probably the most advantageous because of, you know, needing to get in for snow removal, leaf removal, and things like that. I think that is it. Yeah. Did anybody have any questions? I can go back to any screens. Try to keep it as brief as possible.
Council members, any questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Foe, I believe, had his hand up first, and Lingua after that. Go ahead, Councilmember Foe.
Kim, thank you very much for helping put this together. It was a really tremendous presentation. Can we go back to the slide about, I think it was at Taylor and Queensbury? I think it's number 5 on our list.
And
You mean the one
Queensbury.
outside the school?
Yeah, you were talking about a raised table potentially, and
Yeah, there you go.
yes, thank you so much, Councilman Lingua. You had just suggested that the raised table. I saw the cost of $2,800. What would the cost of something be like that? I know it would increase it dramatically. I was just wondering if you had any ideas or estimates as to what something like that might cost.
Yeah, a raised crosswalk, because you don't have to use like brick in the middle. It could be all asphalt. So something like that would probably just double it, but and include a little more MOT because it takes a couple more days to do something like that. The estimate here is pretty much for the flashing sign and a speed bump kind of in the middle of the block. But yeah.
What was it? I'm sorry. Is it a raised table? The picture on the bottom right, the entire intersection being raised?
Yeah. And speed cushions, speed bumps, speed humps, and speed tables depend on how much you're trying to slow the traffic down and how much traffic you have. You know, in the old, I guess I say the old days, I don't know how many years ago, 50, you know, you had bumps pretty much, the ones where you totally got to stop, and they're short, they're high, and you really got to stop. But they were causing problems for high traffic roadways. And this is probably considered, Taylor is one of your higher traffic roadways through town. So something like a speed hump will slow you down, but not stop you totally. And then the speed table is the one where traffic pretty much goes not too different, but it gives you a lot more awareness. So there's different uses for different ones. Everyone has its pros and its cons.
I love the concept of doing anything we can here because we have an elementary school in a high traffic area, and it's just a worst case scenario with speeding as people try to get on to East West Highway from that. And I want to put any and all options on the table to help push forward pedestrian safety there.
Yeah, so it would double. Something like the crosswalk, an asphalt one with just pavement markings on it would be about double that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lingua had his hand up earlier. Did you want to go next, David?
If I may, please.
Please go ahead.
I'll pick up on that one there at what we were just talking about. Personally, knowing the fact that that's the intersection where our former chief of police got T-boned because he was heading eastbound towards the police station, and someone was heading northbound and just missed the stop signs completely and just ran right into him right there. And the fact that we are at a elementary school there, and this is a very busy area, both morning and afternoon during the school year. And it's also a very busy area come rush hour as well. So I would personally, I would like to see anything like a speed hump. Be that mid-block or at least a raised crosswalk, anything that is going to slow traffic down going either north or southbound on that portion of Taylor right there. So as to make that intersection much safer. I think also a mid-block hump will also help make the intersection at Taylor and Riverdale Road somewhat more safer as well, being that we have a bus line that comes through there. I think for us as a council to consider as well, to ask about SHA is to consider at that intersection at 410 in Taylor to think about what if that was an intersection where there was no right turn on red. Reason being that even with the large shrubbery that was removed on the corner there, it is still very difficult to be able to see cars coming down from heading eastbound on 410 until they're literally 75 yards from the 75 to 50 yards from the intersection. And the more I've gone up there, the more I keep considering that it might just be safer to make that a no right turn on red. If we could go to the crosswalk, crosswalk at where was it saying? Town Center Market, the one that's at Queensbury and Lafayette, in that area.
Mhm.
I will admit, there was a time where I was just as an experiment to see, I would cross if you were to look at the either picture really, right where that stop line is on Queensbury. I thought about what if a crosswalk were there. And I think it was about after maybe the third time I realized, oh, no, not a good spot, because what happens is that you have people coming over the railroad tracks and they're also coming downhill from that point. They're on a decline coming towards you. And I was wondering if you did mention something about a mid-block crosswalk at that in between Natoli Place and Lafayette.
No, it was pretty much here at that corner. You can either come like perpendicular straight across. That would make
Yeah.
this one a mid-block. But
Yeah.
yeah, what you said is exactly right. There are a lot of things going up here. The
Yes,
sight distance for even this car coming down, and you got somebody crossing here. There's no stop signs in between. So the only other option you would have, if you've ever seen where folks put one of these signs in the middle of the street that pretty much just says yield to pedestrians. So you don't necessarily have anywhere for them to stop, but you'll give
Right.
attention to, somebody
Yeah.
crossing in a crosswalk. It's not the best place to cross, no.
no, I was, that's why I was thinking, if there was consideration given to a mid-block or something closer to Natoli Place to
Like
cross
in
over.
this way.
Yes, because essentially a lot of the traffic right behind there, what you're not seeing in this picture is, from where you're standing, you're right behind the main entrance there to the parking lot. And so essentially that's traffic always either slowing down to get in, or traffic that is slow coming out. And it's a much more calmer area for a crosswalk, and as well, it gives more space for that traffic coming off of from west of there coming across the tracks, more space to navigate and to be able to stop and not really holding up and leaving someone stranded on the tracks.
Mhm.
That would be my one suggestion is in a placement somewhere along there. Going back.
Could I jump in
over-
on that one real quick?
Sure.
Sorry, it's my word and keep us from having to talk about it twice. Just wanted to agree with Councilmember Lingwood. This was going to be one of my suggestions also. But I had envisioned that from Napoli Place coming across there as a spot for a crosswalk. It's also important to consider that, like, we have to get a crosswalk there somewhere because folks, I wish you could see where I was pointing, but that's a very small parking lot giving the facility there. And so folks, including me, sometimes park over here in the Mark parking lot and walk over.
It's over here.
Right now it's either walk without a crosswalk or go all the way up to town center, come back around, which is the correct option, I think, but we know they're not going to do that.
Reality, they're probably not going to do that.
Yeah. So glad to see this in the recommendations here, and looking forward to it. Thanks.
I'll chime in on that. I'll say that we had an urban designer, Paul Mortensen, on contract before, and we asked him to unofficially weigh in on this, and he also suggested something closer to Natoli Place in this location. Okay,
If I could
Councilman
just-
Lingwood, did you have more? Go ahead, sir.
I had
Ms.
I
Lewis,
wanted
did
to
you
talk.
want to, Director Lewis?
Actually, I did, if I may, Councilmember Lingworth, to
Sure.
make one point about Natoli. So we're looking
Sure.
at the east corner of Natoli for the crosswalk there.
Uh-huh.
If so, we'll need to prevent parking on this corner, which happens quite frequently. The sight distance is completely obliterated by a parked car that's right at the corner there. So we'll have to paint this curve to prevent parking.
Yeah, well, where I was thinking of, I mean, that part on Queensberry across
Kim,
from
you
Town
can
Center Market.
Your cursor on this picture in the lower left-hand side.
Yeah,
Actually, never moved it.
yeah,
little
that's
further.
actually right where that cursor was. That's where I was thinking you could put a crosswalk.
Right there.
Actually, a little more to the west, just a slight bit more.
Oh, I see. Okay, I had it on the,
Yeah, just,
see northwest
right in
corner.
that area.
In the
Just,
center.
Okay.
I wouldn't even go center. I'd probably be going a little more to the right, just to the right of that tree there.
That clarification is helpful. Okay.
Yeah, I think that because it's set in, it allows people who are going up, it allows for a lot of flexibility. And if you're not allowed to park over on that side of the street, okay.
Well, no, I think it is prohibited there. I was thinking about the
is.
corner east of that. I believe it is,
Yeah.
parking is prohibited there.
Okay,
I was looking at the north east corner.
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking somewhere in that area. Every time that I've gone over there and I've tried crossing, I've always felt really safe right there.
Yeah, at one point, we were going to look at this whole kind of triangle area. Very early on, we had our traffic engineer involved in it too, but yeah, because that introduces like the mid-block crossing. Yeah, but this spot probably better than the others. You probably have to still introduce something with regards to giving the motorists and the vehicles some type
Sure.
of pre-warning,
Sure.
but
I think we're all on board. This is a traffic nightmare.
yeah,
And pedestrian nightmare there. And we're talking about development in the area as well. So I think any and all, I think the whole council would be in support of anything that we can do in this area to make it more pedestrian friendly and more conducive to walking.
I would add, and I know this is not something that can be done in this round or, would require probably a good amount of time given the ownership, land ownership issues at that intersection, but Natoli and Lafayette as just like streets, correct me if I'm wrong, they're completely redundant, right? Like
yes.
they don't do anything but confuse, and
Right.
I would be open to in the future reworking that intersection to eliminate the redundancy and confusion, but also in a way where we could maybe introduce some additional green space in that area.
Mhm.
that particular idea has been discussed for quite a while. So please keep our feet to the fire on that.
I'll
I
take
think
a
I
number.
first heard a suggestion about it in the
You may
late
wanna
90s.
talk with-
So
And you may want to talk with Jeffrey York about that too.
I'm sure he has a lot of good ideas about it.
Yeah, some which may have been looked at already, you know, because it's probably a reason why it is the way it is now. So it'd be good to know what they looked at, if there were pedestrian counts or anything done like that in the past, anything that would help, yeah.
okay, Councilmember Lingua, did you have any more comments, or can I pass the baton on to Councilmember Smith?
Actually, if I could finish up, I just wanted to talk about Riverside cul-de-sac.
Mm.
Yeah, right there. And this is probably more of a bigger question for council to consider. Considering you could almost draw a line just to the right of where all that catering is. And, you know, and pick up a connecting line over into the background of right on Riverside Drive, right before where the cul-de-sac begins. Really the parking over there is more just extra parking. Anyone who lives over along that portion of Riverside Drive parks along the side where the houses are. And if there was anything that was redundant, it's that extra space. And consideration for council to think about is what if that was essentially just essentially that portion of road was, again, along a line just to the right of where all that catering is, where the consistency of the asphalt remains. If that was essentially cut there, that road was slimmed, and that portion there that's catering and all is just made green space again. And essentially what that would mean is that on that side of the road, there would no longer be parking along that side.
Presumably there would be some hammerhead or something like that at the end of the street, or?
No, not a hammerhead. It still loops around, but it's
Okay.
narrower on that one side. So it's just more of a turnaround for the residents that are over there. And then you just take that other area that's been returned back to being green space, and we can use that for any number of things planting wise, because it gives us more of a buffer away from the levee, which then we could possibly consider using for planting trees or something of the like.
Okay, interesting idea.
Last thing is well, the other question I had on that about Riverside Drive is like, which side were you considering the sidewalk to be going on? I imagine you're talking about the 5900 block of Riverside Drive.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
I think we were mostly talking about that would be the,
Would it be
The
on the
hou- the
south
house-
side?
no, maybe it's not Riverside Drive, it's right here along these
That's
houses.
Riverside, that's Riverside Drive.
Okay, yeah, so you have some houses that have sidewalk. I wish they had a better picture of.
Yes, you have the blocks, you have the houses on the 6000 block of Riverside Drive, save for one small area that could probably have a brick overlay put in,
Mhm.
which would work fine. But then what happens is that, and that connects up to the 5000 block of Oglethorpe,
Mhm.
which is a sidewalk along its north side. So the west side of Riverside Drive versus the connecting to the north side of Oglethorpe.
Yeah, it
Now,
was mo-
interestingly enough, what you do have around towards the park is on the 5000 block of Nicholson, you have a sidewalk on the south side of Nicholson. On the 5000 block of Nicholson. There is a sidewalk along the south side that comes into the park. Okay, my suggestion would be to consider a sidewalk along the, what is, okay, I know this gets a little confusing, but let's just, it would be along the east side of Riverside Drive, so that it too goes along the park side and essentially feeds into where Riverside Neighborhood Park is.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion. And I also suggest, prior to like considering how that sidewalk is going to go in, the town is engaged in a tree inventory and inspection to determine what trees we have, what kind of shape they're in, so on and so forth. I can tell you right now that there is a substantially sized tree that is very much on its last legs and most likely is going to be something that's going to be considered to be removed. And were it to do so, it would change considerably how you would go about putting in a sidewalk over there. So
On
I
the
think
west
some
side.
coordinate, yes,
Uh-huh.
no, on the east
Oh,
side.
the east side, okay.
Yes. Yes, the east side is going to allow you to put a much more interesting sidewalk in and a much more scenic sidewalk in. I think it's going to be a better walking experience. Most of the traffic is coming in from Nicholson. I would say a good 80 to 90% comes in through the 5,000 block of Nicholson Street off of Taylor. Mainly because as you are exiting out of the park, there is a sign that says you're not allowed to make a right turn. That was put in better part of 25, 27 some years ago.
Mm.
Due to someone's, the house is over there at this very corner that you're showing. As people were leaving the park at a speed not to be recommended, were making the turn and sideswiping vehicles.
Mm.
So they put the no right turn sign in. So the vast majority of the traffic in and out of the park is coming over the 5,000 block of Nicholson, hence the speed hump that is along the street. That would be my suggestion there, because then that sidewalk then attaches up to that sidewalk that's on the south side of Nicholson. It would make sense to have that there. Might have some little small oversized bridges to consider building, but
Mhm.
it would be something that most any good Eagle Scout could put up in 2 days. So I don't think it would be a problem for anyone. These sump ponds that occur along Taylor, this is the very last thing I have. Thank you for bearing with me.
Mhm.
There is an issue. I was wondering if on your list is Madison and the corner of Madison and Taylor, which is farther down. It's 2 blocks down from where you're talking about there at Oglethorpe. It's a little farther down. I don't know if it's really going to be able to show it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
There is a substantial pond that happens there, and then when the cold weather comes, it freezes over. And being that the folks over there in Madison do not have a sidewalk, they're left to try to negotiate that pond that fills up right there. And I got one more question for you. Have you looked at, or is it being considered, the very end of Taylor is 50th Avenue. It is right next to the pumping station down there that is run by Prince George's County. And there is that road that comes out from 50th Avenue to that intersection of Lafayette and Taylor. That is definitely in stage 5 shape.
50th, that,
It's at the
Okay.
very bottom of
It's Taylor.
Taylor. Yes, where it intersects with Lafayette.
okay, I will check that one.
And it's the one, as you're coming southbound, you come to that stop sign, you look over to your left. And you can just start right up there. You'll see the pumping station. Then there's that road that goes back there. It is, I think, actually saying it was a 5 would be, underestimating it. So,
Yeah, I will definitely, I'll take a snapshot of what robotics has in there too, because I'm wondering if it was missed some type of way. That's definitely a town roadway.
yeah, it might have been confused for being in Edmonston.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
Edmonston line is very close to there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it could be easily, or it's just thought of, oh, it's the driveway into the county facility, where it actually it's the main way a county gets in there, yes. But it's also for any folks living back there, it's their way out.
And it's a
Um,
town road. Okay, yeah, I'll check,
yes.
make sure it was even surveyed. I'm pretty sure, most of the 5s definitely have been done. So if it's that bad, I need to see if it's even on the survey. Yep.
Okay, and my final thing, concrete pads at bus stops along the road routes that you're looking at resurfacing. We have some put in some places, but I don't think we have them all covered.
Okay.
And as you know, buses that stop there so many times a day, so many days a week, so many days a year, hot and cold weather, the road starts to warp. But when you have that concrete pad, it keeps it's easier on the life of the road. So, okay.
We
I'm
will
good.
take a look at that. That would be it's a 90-foot pad half the time. So
Yeah,
that's what they recommend. So
yeah.
we'll take
but I
a
know
look
our-
at the space and
I know the bus drivers will love it. So, okay, that is it. Thank you very much for bearing with me.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Smith, you've been very patient.
It's safety of our roads. It's very important that we spend some time on it. Could you go back to project area 3, Queensberry at oh no, that's the one sorry. That is the one I jumped in to avoid talking about twice. Queensberry, US 1 to 43rd place.
That should be close to first. Okay.
So just, I'm pretty sure I heard this right, but just to make sure, we're talking about including the calming devices, improvements, whatever, on each of these 3 intersections there.
Yeah, we looked at all 3 and we think there can at least be something put at one crosswalk, maybe not on both, maybe not on all ends. But yeah, I think there was one location where there were no stop signs either. At 44th.
Yes.
Yeah. So that one, we might have to have a traffic warrant to make sure there can be a stop sign first, or we need a little more investigation on that one.
There's a lot of issues with that block.
Yeah,
of,
the space,
44th.
the space is there, but there's no existing stop sign.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then can we go to the Riverdale Park Station traffic calming? So I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, and apologize if I missed already covering this. But you talked about the difference between speed humps, speed bumps, etc. Could you tell me about the stop bars and split speed humps?
Well, I know the speed cushions, the speed humps are here. So is that what you mean by the split speed humps or split?
I'm looking at the scope on project area 1. It says ladder crosswalks and stop bars.
Okay. These up here.
Which ones? I'm sorry. Okay.
Along Van Buren mostly.
Sorry, I keep having to go from full screen on this to look back at the.
Yeah, I don't think I can make this bigger.
No, I got
either.
it. I full
Okay.
screened it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so mostly those along Van Buren.
So I'm just wondering, like, what is the difference between those things? The stop, like, what is the stop? Or is that just like the painted line that's not an actual, like, raised surface?
Yeah, these are just painted crosswalks here along Van Buren. The
Okay.
ones
Rather
here,
than, I'm sorry, I was going to clarify, rather than parallel lines, these are ladder-like crosswalks. So they're hatched in the middle. You have the parallel line
Right.
sides and hatching in the middle, as opposed to a speed hump or a split speed hump, which simply leaves a portion of the pavement at grade so that large vehicles, fire trucks, in fact, we got that feedback
First
from the
responders.
fire department, exactly, to have this split so the fire trucks actually drive at grade across them. And otherwise the humps are too wide, or the at grade sections
Right.
are too wide for a vehicle to
Right.
transverse through them. Yeah.
And then I see those are speed humps on Woodbury. Is that correct?
Yes. Should be Woodbury, Rhode Island Avenue.
Okay, so when those are, it says, so like on Woodbury Street there,
Mhm.
there's gonna be speed bumps, or that's one speed hump basically split in two because it's
Yeah,
part of
that's
it's left
almost
grade.
just like the picture. Yeah, you'll have, because a yellow stripe line is also proposed down the middle, so it's almost just like this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate all the work staff and Ms. Adams have done on this. This has been a priority of mine. Of course, I know we can't get started on the actual work until we complete the transfer of the roads to town ownership, but really happy to see movement on this issue. We have a lot of families with children there, and a lot of our neighbors don't consider their safety as they cut through the neighborhood to get over to Whole Foods and all of the other great spots in Ward 1 up there at Riverdale Park Station. So thank you. Really glad to see this.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Are there any additional council comments at this time, or can I open it up for public comments? Looks like public comments. Are there any public comments on the presentation? Not seeing any, so thank you very much, Ms. Adams, and appreciate the presentation and all the information. Will we be receiving a copy of this presentation? I didn't see it in the meeting packet.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, very good. I look forward to seeing that, and thank you again. And I presume we'll be talking to you again in the not too distant future as some of these projects get a little bit closer.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, let me stop sharing there. Okay.
That was fantastic stuff, guys. Thank you so much for the work that's done there. That's a dialogue that a lot of people are going to be really excited about in this community. That's great work, staff. Thank you.
Here.
And if I may just add, Director Lewis is the one who champions this and is leading this effort. At the work session at the end of the month, we'll have Director Lewis back along with Chief Gwixens and Marissa Davis and Jessica Barnes. They're working on a strategic approach to the Walk, Bike, Drive Safety Initiative, and all this dovetails together. So more to come in a few weeks.
Small government is the best government. Local government is the best government.
Okay. We appear to be done with the road improvements presentations. So let's move on to the next item, proclamation and recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So this is the proclamation. Whereas domestic violence is an epidemic affecting individuals in every community, regardless of age, economic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. And whereas domestic violence remains a major public health, social justice, and human rights issue requiring particular attention. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic and related stressors and isolation have led to a dramatic increase in domestic violence. And whereas there is an urgent need more than ever for communities to get involved by increasing awareness of domestic violence, supporting organizations that support victims of domestic violence, and promoting efforts to eliminate domestic violence in our community. And whereas the wide prevalence of domestic violence compels all of us to come together and get involved as a coordinated community effort to end the abusive violence in our relationships, in our families, and in our community. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for residents to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, services, and assistance to victims. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Council of the Town of Riverdale Park, Maryland, that the month of October is recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Residents of Riverdale Park are urged to work together to spread awareness of domestic violence and to wear purple or illuminate their homes with purple light as a visible sign that our community supports those who are impacted by domestic violence. Y ahora en español, proclamación. Considerando que la violencia doméstica es una epidemia que afecta a individuos en todas las comunidades, independientemente de la edad, situación económica, orientación sexual, género, raza, religión o nacionalidad, y considerando que la violencia doméstica sigue siendo un problema de salud pública, justicia social y derechos humanos que requieren atención especial, y considerando que la pandemia de COVID-19, los factores estresantes relacionados y el aislamiento han provocado un aumento dramático de la violencia doméstica, y considerando que hay una necesidad urgente, más que nunca, para que las comunidades se involucren por aumentar la conciencia de la violencia doméstica, apoyo a organizaciones que apoyan a víctimas de violencia doméstica y promover esfuerzos para eliminar la violencia doméstica en nuestra comunidad. Y considerando que la amplia prevalencia de la violencia obliga a todos a unirse y participar como un esfuerzo coordinado de la comunidad para poner fin a la violencia abusiva en nuestras relaciones, nuestras familias y nuestra comunidad. Y considerando que el mes de concientización sobre violencia doméstica proporciona una excelente oportunidad para los residentes aprender más sobre prevención de la violencia doméstica y mostrar apoyo a las numerosas organizaciones e individuos que proporcionan apoyo crítico, servicios y asistencia a las víctimas. Ahora, por lo tanto, ser proclamada por el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park, Maryland, que se reconoce el mes de octubre como mes de concientización sobre violencia doméstica. Los residentes de la ciudad de Riverdale Park se insta a trabajar juntos para difundir la violencia doméstica y usar ropa color morado o iluminar sus hogares con luz morado como un signo visible que apoya a nuestra comunidad quienes se ven afectados por la violencia doméstica. Thank you very much. That brings us on the agenda to my report, the mayor's report. I believe that we discussed this at the beginning of the meeting. I am out of town and on a very untrustworthy internet connection. I am connected by phone, by audio, so I may lose video, but I hopefully will continue to have audio. If I lose all of them, then Councilmember Lingual will take over while I am not available. The redistricting committee had a meeting in September, and our next meeting is on October 19th at 7:30 p.m. I encourage everyone to join us at that time. I'll be talking more about what came out of the meeting in September later in the agenda. Those of you who were in attendance at the meeting 2 weeks ago, the work session, are aware that we had an incident where a member of our police department intentionally fired his weapon at a residence, which resulted in the death of the resident. This is often known as an officer-involved shooting. The Attorney General's office is investigating. We've seen some preliminary information out of the Attorney General's office, a preliminary report indicating that the resident had pointed a gun at the officer when this happened, and various other facts were part of that. The Attorney General's office is in charge of this investigation. We are cooperating with them. They appear to have completed their information gathering, but it may be weeks to months before we get a final result from those investigations. And I've been out of town for 2 weeks, so the only thing remaining on my report is to discuss the COVID situation. One of the things I've learned recently is that apparently not a lot of people are aware that there is a new bivalent, so-called bivalent vaccine targeting the new variants of the virus, and that everyone, I believe this is everyone over the age of 16 or 17, who is at least a few months out from any previous vaccination is eligible for this, and I encourage all of you to get this vaccination. It's very important, and it's the first truly updated vaccine since the first round, and so there is some hope that it will give us, and some evidence that it will give us a good bit more resistance to many of the strains that are circulating at this time. Well, let me duck back. Councilmember Foe, you have your hand up. Yes, sir.
Just a question. I've always trusted your opinion, and I want to put a hypothetical out there. Not a hypothetical, it's my truth. I contracted COVID. I am bivalently vaccinated. What is the argument, Mr. Mayor, for me to continue to mask in my workplace?
What is the argument? The argument is that you are still far from immune. If you will stick through the rest of my report, then please raise your hand at the end, and if I haven't touched on that, then I'll be happy to discuss it. So, okay, so on to the next topic under COVID. The pandemic is not over. We aren't done yet. I know that certain presidents of the United States, in an apparently unscripted remark, said that it was over, but there's a lot of evidence that that's not true. We do appear to be between waves at this time, but at this time there are 7 or 8 variants of interest, variants of concern that are circulating in populations, various places in the world. And several of them, I wish I didn't have to say this, but several of them appear to have developed mutations that make them more resistant to our current vaccines and any naturally acquired resistance to the virus that people might have. And one of them in particular that is on my radar is so-called BQ1, where the ones that are circulating right now are BA4 and BA5. And to get from BA to BQ, there's a lot of variants in between. And but this one appears to be rising very quickly in Europe at this time. It is filling hospitals in the United Kingdom and England and Scotland, and Wales, and it's a grave concern. In the United States, there is preliminary data coming out of New England that the pandemic is getting worse. More people are getting sick, and we've seen a lot of this before. And so I think it's likely that we will have a wave in the DC area sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks. This is driven partly by people having changed their behaviors, having decided that they can eat out, hang out at bars, all those sorts of fun things that we all wish we could do. But it's unknown what variant it will be, how transmissible it will be, although likely vary, and what the impacts on people are going to be who receive it, how sick they will get, and how many will be hospitalized. So I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Foe, that the virus is working to get around to all of the immunity that you have, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on this at the very end of this report. So there's something that I was reading about just before the last work session 2 weeks ago, and was trying to fully understand. I spent some time on it on my vacation, and that is a couple of studies that have come out of one study out of Singapore, one study out of Taiwan. And this is looking at what people call excess deaths. And so since the initial part of the whole pandemic, early back in 2020, then many people have died of COVID and been marked as having died of COVID, and those deaths are tracked very carefully. But there's been an additional death rate above that, and no one was exactly sure where that was coming from, and whether it was people were on lockdown and were not attending to other medical needs, whether the fact that the health system was overwhelmed meant that people weren't getting access in a timely way to care. And so there were these two studies, one in Taiwan, one in Singapore, which are, not the United States. They have very different systems than us, but still worth looking at. And both of those studies found that the entire excess death rate was in people who had been recently infected with COVID. So the death rate was the same. In the Singapore study, the death rate was the same for those who had been infected, not been infected within the previous 90 days. People who had been infected within the previous 90 days had a higher death rate than was expected. And so that's something to me that's a little bit chilling. For those members of the council who have been infected recently and members of the public who have been infected recently, please pay attention to any symptoms, particularly of heart issues, of circulatory system issues, clots, heart pain, that sort of thing, because that's how many of these problems have manifested themselves. So don't just say it's indigestion. Don't just say it's just a pain. Please pay attention to it. Please address it quickly. It's very important to do that. And and also just the fact that at least in those locations that they seem to be able to explain all of the excess death rate that is being seen purely because it's purely traceable to COVID. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this, and we'll update as we see it in the future. So to wrap up and to answer Councilman Fo's question, I saw this great infographic, and maybe I'll try to get it out on my social media. And it was the Swiss cheese model of preventing infection for yourself. And basically, each of these ways of mitigating the virus, whether it's social distancing, whether it's washing your hands, whether it's wearing a mask, whether it's getting vaccinated, each of them is an imperfect way of protecting yourself from infection and from severe illness. And the more of them than you can do, the better off you are. And so the less likely you are to be infected, the less likely you are to become seriously ill. And so I'm just going to list them all in a row and ask that everyone do as many of these as you can in order to avoid infection and in order to try to get this pandemic under a little bit more control. I'm personally as tired as anyone is of these ongoing waves, and I want this to get under control. And I think we can do this if people were consistently doing all of these. So here's the list: vaccinations, wearing a mask when you are in a public place, and ideally the highest quality mask you can get. N95s are best, and the town distributed tens of thousands of those previously. If the waves coming up appear to be as bad as they may be, we may be just doing that again. Wear an N95 mask as much as you can when you're in public. And social distancing, I already mentioned. Please, if you are out with people, then please just wear the mask as much as you possibly can while you're near other people. And last but not least, if you are a retail business owner, please investigate and implement improved ventilation, air filtration, or sterilization of the indoor air to protect your customers and your employees from illness. And with that, I will conclude my reports. Did that answer your question, Councilmember Foe?
It did. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Unless there are any other questions, then I will can move on the agenda to the town manager's report. Mr. Town
Thank you.
Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. A few items. On the mask, Mr. Mayor, we are planning a distribution. We were going to distribute masks a number of weeks ago, and looking at the numbers, we held off with the expected surge. It seems now's the right time. We recently acquired 2 orders of N95 masks, the same ones we've distributed before. And so we will be distributing to every residential unit, apartment, or single family home throughout the town. So that'll be happening in the next week to 2 weeks. We will be having a swearing in of Chief Quixons. I need to coordinate a date with the mayor on that, but we will be having that ceremonial swearing in. The town recently received, we were notified last week, from GFOA, the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for fiscal year 2023. And so kudos to everyone who has worked on that, but special recognition for Mr. Gentry Jones and for Mr. Paul Smith. It's their dedication and hard work that get us across that line every year. A few dates. Ethics Commission meeting is on October 6th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. There's a redistricting committee meeting October 19th at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom. We have a walk and talk coming up on October 22nd at 9:30. It's a Saturday morning, and staff are finalizing the walk route and the projects that we'll discuss. The council work session at the end of the month is actually on the 31st. So it's going to be on Halloween at 7:30. Good for the council to know that College Park Academy extends an invitation to you and looks forward to you joining them at a ribbon cutting ceremony to celebrate the new Career Pathways art installation on Friday, October 7th at 6:30 p.m. If you are available and plan to attend, please get with Director Barnes. And we received a notice earlier today, and I want to stress that we received this earlier today, that the Recreation Authority work group that the county has, they're having a listening session. This is from their Blue Ribbon work group. And their listening session is Thursday, October 6th at 6 p.m. Members of the work group would like to hear from residents to gain their perspectives on services in the county. And there's a link, and we'll push this out on our social media. We'll make sure that the council has this link as well, should you desire to participate. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Next item on the agenda is the monthly finance report.
Deputy Director Jones.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's finance report cover the months of July, August, and September, as well as a year-to-date of both revenue and expenditures. So for the month of September, in the current fiscal year, revenue totaled $292,937. Expenditures totaled $728,349. With expenditures outpacing revenue, we have $435,412. If you look in the previous fiscal year for September, revenue was a bit higher, as well in the fiscal year beforehand. Expenditures also are a bit higher in the current fiscal year as opposed to fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2021. So for revenue, revenue is still delayed from Prince George's County. So we did receive a notice last week that we do expect to bring in the expected budgeted amount from real estate taxes. So there is a delay there, but we don't expect to receive any less than what was initially budgeted. And for the month of September, expenditures are a bit higher. That was the month that the inflationary stipend was issued out. So we do have a higher expenditure total. So if we look at the year-to-date total, revenue is a bit lower, but again, it is delayed, and we do expect to receive that hopefully within the next month or so. But we have a total for the fiscal year 2023 year-to-date of $688,510. Expenditures total $1,714,000. With our expenditures exceeding revenue, we're at $1,026,289. In the previous years, you can see fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2021, we actually received the Prince George's County real estate at this point. So you'll see those numbers and those figures a bit higher. But if we look at expenditures, we're actually less than where we were in the previous fiscal year, year to date. And for fiscal year 2021, considered, revenue is currently down, but the town is in a favorable financial position, and we don't foresee having any issues with cash flow, as we do have a fairly large reserve on hand. So yeah, that concludes the finance reports for this evening. At this point, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there council questions for Deputy Director Jones?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Mr. Jones, did the county give an indication of when that revenue would be arriving?
We haven't gotten any indication as to when it would arrive, but what we did receive is a total figure that shows what was billed and what has been currently received, with the expectation that within the next month or so we'd receive that. The county did make note that they had actually had a delay in their billing. I believe the mayor mentioned in the previous meeting that it was an issue with paper. So we do expect to receive it shortly, but we haven't received an exact word as to when we will receive it.
Okay, so you're saying your estimation is anywhere from 4 to 7 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional council questions? Is there a motion to adopt the treasurer's report subject to audit?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the treasurer's report subject to audit.
Seconded.
Is there a second? Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there discussion of this motion? Are there public comments? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
I'll assume that was an aye. Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mayers is absent. I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. The next item on the agenda is the correspondence summary. Are there any items in the correspondence summary that require discussion or a motion? Seeing none, move on to the fire department report. Mr. Lustician, has the staff received the fire department report?
We have not, sir.
Okay, I have not received it either. So that will bring us to council, committee, and ward reports. And we'll start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just referring back to the presentation we got earlier, our whole town continues to grow, which is a good thing. But we've got to pay continued attention to the safety of our streets. So I really thank everyone involved with putting that together, and particularly for the really important projects from Ward 1 that were recommended in there. I really personally appreciate the work on that. As you've probably noticed, it's raining a lot outside, and it will be for the next day or more. As far as I know, we haven't had any issues in the Old Town area with flooding. This time around, I think we're sort of at a steady drizzle and not the, fast downpour that usually creates the flash flooding there, that becomes a problem. But going to keep looking out on that throughout the week to make sure that everything's safe over there. I did run into at Town Center earlier this week the folks from Manifest Bakery. They were getting their new grain mill delivered. We're very stressed about it. Apparently this is a very important piece of equipment for their business, as in like the whole thing would go away if it got messed up. So they were stressed, and I tried not to stay more than a couple minutes to get out of their way. But they did let me know that they anticipate opening within the next month or so. So I hope at our work session at the end of the month or next month's legislative session to tell you guys about the wonderful bread that I got from Manifest Bakery, which is now open in Ward 1. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Maybe you can hold up what's left of the first loaf that you have almost finished off.
Maybe. It depends on, like, if they open next week, I don't want to save it that long.
Yeah, I understand. But you'll have a loaf on hand for a while, right? So
I'm sure.
and do the loaf of the month for a while. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
Good evening, everybody. I already told a constituent I can see how I gain my next 10 pounds. Manifest bread. It's probably not going to be good for me, but it's going to be delicious. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. This past weekend was an incredibly significant anniversary in my life. October 1st, 2011, I married my wife. So I want to say happy anniversary to my wife. Marrying you was the biggest coup of my entire life. Also, a significantly important date, October 1st, 2013. We agreed to purchase our home here in Riverdale Park. So that date is tremendously important to us for so many reasons, because not only did it bring into my life Mara Foe, but also Alan Thompson, David Lingua, John Lustician, Jessica Barnes, and a variety of these incredible people that I have gotten to know quite well. Moving here was one of the best decisions that we've ever made. I never envisioned being this engaged in a public life. And I truly, truly, truly do think you are all awesome human beings, and I enjoy getting to work with you every single day. So thank you. We're very gracious to be in Riverdale Park. The mayor brought up the shooting occurred that in Ward 3 a week or two ago. And I'm going to withhold comment until the Attorney General's investigation is complete. I feel that feels right. I just want to again applaud staff and council for approving body-worn cameras. I don't know when that occurred, 3 or 4 years ago, But the fact that we have this information will expedite any decision that is made. And again, I think it is best practice in policing, and I am so glad that we have this information to assist the Attorney General in their investigation. So I just, again, that was excellent decision making by staff, and thank you for bringing that and putting it on our plate. I have been lucky enough to attend all of the redistricting committee meetings, one even on Facebook. And it's really remarkable to see the effort that has gone into this process. I want to thank everybody who has been engaged in that process. We have the mayor himself, Chris Fike, Ifiok Inyang, and Kate Kelly have been tremendously communicative, responsive, dialoguing about the future of our committee. And I would encourage everybody on council to start paying attention, because you're going to see that there's some drastic changes potentially occurring in our wards. And I just want you to be prepared and ready for those dialogues that are about to happen, because we have a quick turnaround to approve these maps and then a quick turnaround into elections. It's important stuff that we need to start looking at. Last but not least, I am looking for staff participation in a dialogue about this, potentially council as well. I want to move forward with dialogues about next steps for Adam and Emily Plummer Park. I know that we have intentions on, putting a giant step forward in the footprint of the map. But I also want to talk about how we look to honor the experience of that family, how we can commemorate, what the enslaved experienced here in Prince George's County. And I also have visions of a monument to the unnamed enslaved that I would like to push forward. I really, truly do believe that we have an incredible opportunity to provide appropriate historical narrative in this space. And I couldn't be more excited about being part of that process moving forward. With that, my ward report is over. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. And I guess this is your last single-digit celebration of living in town, right?
Right
Because
on.
next year will be
9
10.
years. Yeah, no, it's like I said, I can remember that day, us being so effusive, seeing what was available here in Riverdale Park and getting our beautiful home, meeting all of you. It truly, like, I don't say that to be cheesy. Yeah, I think you are all really incredible human beings, and I count myself lucky to have you in my life. So thank you.
And I at least feel the same about you, Councilmember Foe. Thank you so much. It's been nice to get to know you and Mara and your child over these many years. Moving on, Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And just wanted to acknowledge the kind words, the councilman in the second ward. Fine gentleman that he is, and the finer he'll become once he becomes a Pittsburgh Thunderbirds fan, but that's for another day. I did have a question before I get started regarding what he was discussing about the Adam and Emily Francis Plummer Park. And that being is what you're considering also in conjunction with what came out of the charrettes we had for the designing of the park that NDC helped us with.
Can I respond to that?
Mhm.
No design changes at all. I have no intent on trying to change the footprint of the park. Just signage and appropriate places to have a
So
dialogue.
this is in addition to.
This is in addition to the existing footprint that we already talked about at the charrette. So no, I have no intentions of design changes. I don't think anybody else has either.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. As far as I know, the CCAR CDC will be meeting tomorrow evening. I believe that's going to start at 5:30. I would say if anyone is interested, do check their website, ccarcdc.org, for the time and the Zoom information on that as well. As Councilman from the second ward as well also stated, I'm going to refrain from any comment regarding what occurred on September 19th in Ward 3. I hold the family close in sympathy and prayer for what has occurred to them. It's not an easy death to experience for them, and I hold them, like I said, I hold them in my prayers. One comment I wanted to bring up for something for the council and folks to consider now with what has come on with the legislation that has just recently passed regarding how we're all able to help each other through the grant programs now to be able to prepare your homes inside and around on the property prior to force storms to mitigate as best possible when substantial amounts of rains drop, be it over a long or short period of time. There's not going to be a silver bullet, but if there's a way to prepare as best as one possibly can, these programs will help towards that. And I hope folks are able to review them and consider them. And if you have any questions, please ask. Really, the only way, or one of the ways that we're going to be able to approach these as best we can is by working together through these programs, and also working together in between municipalities in discussing and coordinating as best we can development and stormwater management on a much wider basis than we've really ever considered before. Things now in this 21st century are very different than what they were in the later part of the 20th century. And what we're able to do now is what's going to be able to help not only ourselves, but future residents here later down the road. And with that, I'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Siddiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia, do you have a ward report for this month for Ward 5?
No, not at this moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
That takes us to public comments on non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Ms. Katz, I believe. Please speak.
So sorry, my internet seemed to hiccup right then. But good evening, everyone. I have an update for the mayor, the council, and in particular our town manager, but certainly the rest of our town staff who are here today, with regard to the tree summit that was held on September 10th. I'd just like to provide a brief update, if that would be all right.
Please.
Fantastic. So It was held on September 10th virtually. And first of all, I'd like to thank the staff profusely for all the work they did in order to bring this tree summit to reality for us with the help of the Sustainability Committee as well. And I'm on the Sustainability Committee, so I'm sort of thinking from that perspective regarding the summit. We had about 50 attendees for the first part of the summit, which consisted of presentations by the director of the U.S. National Arboretum, Dr. Richard Olson, and Mary Lee, and I'm not going to say her last name right, Howitt, I believe. She's on the tree committee with the city of Mount Rainier. Both of those people provided excellent presentations along with our very own Ivy Lewis, Director of Public Projects and Services. So there were over 50 people in attendance to hear those presentations, which provided a lot of great information on a larger regional level as well as the local and town level about trees. The second part of the summit was with residents. We had about approximately 20 residents participate in providing input. We have collected on the Sustainability Committee over 182 items of input. We're currently processing those, organizing them in order to deliver them to the council and staff for hopefully to help you in decision making. The people that provided the input also came up with organizing the input into about 10 different categories or topic areas. So the organization that we're continuing with is to provide you an easy way to go through all this content at the topic level. Unfortunately, during the event, we did not have time to have those providing input actually prioritize these topic areas they came up with. We're trying to work on a survey to send back out to those that attended to see if we can get that information for you as well to add into the report. Are there any questions or ideas regarding what I've presented regarding the tree summit? Okay, I hope that was beneficial.
Very glad to hear that it went off so well, and to participate in it, not completely, but during a lot that I was there. I enjoyed it.
Right, and really, and to wrap that up, we are now working on actually doing another summit in Spanish to make sure that we really have covered all of the bases when it comes to the residents in the community on the input that we're gathering. But as Councilmember Lingua, who has just raised his hand, I see, but he had suggested that we certainly provide, organize the information we have now, and then we can certainly add to that information as we gather more of it from the Spanish-speaking community. Councilmember Lingua, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I do, if you don't mind. A lot of what, in light of what's going on with the town it's looking to do with its grant to essentially doing a full survey and assessment of trees that are its responsibility in the public right of way. A lot of the ideas that are coming out of this summit are going to also be reviewed once that's done, correct?
So I think the intention of the Sustainability Committee is to package up all that we've collected and to hand it off to staff and the council. What you do with that information, I would assume, would be relevant to the assessments that are being done. For instance, one of the topic areas is planning. So I think that residents also are thinking about what would come out of an assessment and what the next steps might be with regards to an assessment that the town's planning to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense, or does that?
Yeah.
Resonate? Okay. Yeah. All right, and then I did have just a couple of other topics I wanted to touch on as a member of the public. First of all, I wanted to thank Ryan Shelton for the follow-up he did with the county regarding asking for information on the most recent MUTC meeting. And I was unfortunately not successful, but I do appreciate the effort. I've been on the site and I don't see either minutes or a video of the most recent meeting. Videos of the meetings aren't on there. I think there's just one meeting that has a multimedia piece on it, but I was wondering if there'd even be minutes, because that meeting had that presentation on the development that's going to go on at the Chambers Funeral Home, and there was no other way for me to share what I heard in that meeting with others. No document.
Ms. Katz, if I
Yes,
may?
yes.
The committee reviews minutes at each meeting. I don't believe I've seen draft minutes for that meeting yet, but the committee, next time it meets, in the meeting for this week was canceled because there are no applications, but as soon as we meet again, there will be minutes and we will review them and approve them at that time.
Okay. Well,
And I'm
process.
willing to pass on the draft minutes as soon as they're available, as long as they're clearly marked as draft.
certainly. Thanks. I appreciate that. That's great. And my next item is Gosling Pond, the Gosling Pond area, which I go by when I go to work a couple of days a week now. And so much is going on there. No water in the pond and big storm grates. And it looks like a lot of expensive work is being done. I know that's not something the town oversees, and that's not my intention, but it's within the town boundaries. And I was really curious if the town knows any more about what that's hoping to achieve, what that's about, what that final product might look like, anything about that project.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
if I
Smith, do you have an
can,
answer?
I spoke.
Director Lewis.
Thank you. I spoke with the project manager, I'm thinking maybe 9 or even 12 months ago about that project, and it was simply supposed to be a dredging project at that time. The fact that this is still underway leads me to believe maybe something else has been added or they've had some issue which has delayed completion of the project. I will follow up with the contact whose name I can't remember, but to get an update.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks significant to me. I don't know if Councilmember Smith has some knowledge about that or has seen that.
Again, the purpose was for the health and stability of the pond. There was a lot of siltation there. Yeah.
Councilmember Smith included me on an email. I don't know that if he followed through, but it's his favorite fishing hole. So he.
Fish there now.
Oh, now it's in the minutes.
Captain, I didn't
Put
say
it in public record.
It's a hole right now. That's the list of fish are in the tank
no,
at his house.
it is shocking, and I don't know that he followed up through, but he sent an email, and Councilwoman Glaros reached back out to us with a name. Have you followed through with that? Because I have not.
Yes, I have. Not with that particular contact. Rather than going through the bureaucracy of it, I just stopped and talked to the workers while they were there one day, which I find is generally the best way to get the most accurate information. What I've learned, one, I want to thank them for doing the work because the pond needs it. Also for draining it long enough that I can take pictures of what the bottom looks like for when they fill it back up, so I know where the fish are. I'm really thankful for that. But yeah, so they drained the pond, as you know, previously, removed several tons of sediment out of it. That because it's a retention pond, right? So all the dirt and stuff that gets picked up along the way deposits there and makes the pond shallower than is intended, and that it makes it more functional. So apparently when it was done previously and then filled back up, the work was not done to a certain standard. I didn't get much information about that, but it had to be done again, which is why you see that the project this time looks a little bit more involved than it did last time, because apparently it should have been more involved last time. But once the project is complete, the pond should be significantly deeper, should be measures put in place to prevent the silt or the sediment from gathering again. They're going to do some landscaping, put some cool plants around the edges of the pond and stuff. Good places for frogs and lizards to hop into the water and the fish to eat them. So that's what I know about the project. Hope that clarifies things a bit.
Actually, I found an email from February that says essentially the same thing. Yes, thank you.
There's like a huge storm grate there, like 10 foot long. And then there's also, looks like more work being done across the path from the pond. But I don't know.
So the
Not
storm culvert that's there now is not big enough. So expanding it is gonna, it's not gonna fix by any means our flooding issues, but it will increase the rate of flow through the storm drainage plan or whatever it's called. But yeah, so that's why it's replacing a smaller culvert.
All right, thank you so much. I'll look forward to when they finish that. They've been working on it for quite a while. And then finally, just probably, I don't know if this is appropriate for this meeting, but the Queensbury, Rhode Island Avenue development project that had put up signage about about a meeting about that project, which occurred a few weeks ago. That signage, I don't know this for a fact today because I have not seen it today, but the signs and it was debris. Every sign, which was also probably about 5 to 6 feet wide with big stakes that put up these signs, the debris was everywhere. And I was curious if the town can get whoever put those signs up to clean that up if it hasn't still been cleaned up since that meeting is over.
Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, that's something that we'll take care of, Laura.
Thank you so much.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Nope, that was it.
Well, I wanted to say this when you were talking about the tree summit. You're very modest. I want to thank you for your hard work, not just with the summit, but for keeping us on track with all this green team efforts and that, and the staff team finds your work and the work of the committee extremely valuable. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. I hope this has met your needs, Mr. Town Manager, and certainly it was not me. It was the tree subcommittee and other folks that jumped in there, and it really was a team effort. And actually, thank you, because it was a good opportunity for us to really coalesce around a common cause, and I think it strengthened our committee. So thank you very much for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Appreciate your comments. Any additional public comments? Seeing none, hearing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is not neither discussed nor debated. So if I can please have a motion to approve all consent agenda items.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Smith. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilmember Foe. As I said, there's no debate nor discussion. So I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. That brings us, let me go and mark up my agenda so I don't lose track of where we are. To legislative action items, item number 1. Councilmember Mejia missed 3 consecutive meetings before this meeting, and if we do not have a motion to excuse one or more of those absences, then we will need to make a declaration that the seat is vacant and proceed from that. So would someone like to make a motion to excuse one or more of those absences, or do you want to have discussion first, or what? What is the will of the council?
We could, well, if we make the motion, we can discuss also during the motion, correct?
Correct. That's generally the way things are supposed to work, but sometimes people want to have a discussion before making a motion.
I'm
I can make the
comfortable
motion.
either way on this in terms of how we want to approach it. So,
I can make the motion.
Please,
Aye.
sir.
Motion to excuse absences of the Ward 5 council member for, let's say, tonight and the previous absence. Would that cover us?
So the 19th, she's here tonight, so no need to.
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
Excuse that tonight. So excuse the absence on the 19th, is that correct?
Yes.
December 19th? Okay. there a second?
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Discussion. Councilmember Mejia, please feel free to weigh in. This is you.
Hello, good evening. I just be having like difficult time to be in the meetings because of work. Because my schedule have changed. So on Mondays, I was getting off of work early. So now it changed. So now October, my schedule for the last month, my schedule was different. So now this month, October, it changed. So I will be here in the meetings every Mondays, and I apologize for my absence.
Okay. Would it have been helpful if the meeting started later during the month of September, or do you expect your work schedule to again change? Do you have any idea?
No, it's not going to change. So it's better. 7:30 is giving me enough time because I don't drive, so I'll be on the bus coming home. So that give me enough time. 7:30.
Okay.
That's good enough for me.
Any additional discussion? This is perhaps only slightly related. Director Barnes, where are we on the absences of Councilmember Mayers at this time? Is this her third meeting, or she had one recently? Can you tell us?
No, I have her marked as present on September the 19th, so she should be in good shape.
Okay. As I said, she is ill this evening, recovering from a medical procedure. So, if we wanted to add her to this motion as a forgiven for tonight, then we could do that, or not, as council sees appropriate. Not seeing any microphones go live, so I'll assume that's not for the moment. Okay. Are there any public comments on this motion? I will do a roll call vote then. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
The clarification, we're voting for the absence on the 19th of September.
That's correct.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Let's move on to legislative action item number 2, motion to authorize the town manager to enter into a sub-recipient agreement with the University of Maryland regarding Rise Zone Rental Assistance Fund. Is someone ready to make a motion, or do we want to have a staff report it first? Just to remind everyone what this is about. Someone wants to make a motion, just make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Can we have the staff discussion at this time?
Absolutely, I can provide some more information. So as a reminder, the Rise Zone is the regional. I just looked it up. I miss the I every time. The Regional Institution Strategic Enterprise Zone program. It's a state program designed to incentivize businesses to partner with our local universities in the state of Maryland. The original program was incentivizing businesses to locate in these areas using tax credits. Many of the businesses that were targeted for this program were not actually buying the property and or instead of renting or leasing the space. So the tax credit, the property tax credit, was not as much of an incentive for those businesses. To amend the program, the state has added a means of creating a Rise Zone rental program as long as the jurisdictions and the institution that are in the application together are in agreement. The town has spoken with the City of College Park and also the University of Maryland, and as well as Prince George's County, about us establishing a rental program. To my knowledge, this is the first Rhizome rental program out of, I believe it's at least 4 or 5 other Rhizome areas within the state. And the City of College Park has moved to contribute $50,000 for the rental space in their jurisdiction, and we have a substantial amount of space for businesses in the Rhizome to move into within town of Riverdale Park. So this subrecipient agreement, which is very similar to the agreements we had with the nonprofits when we had our nonprofit ARPA grant programs to help feed residents through our nonprofit grant program. This agreement would also be for $50,000, which would provide $200,000 in total to the program, as the state's Rhizome fund will match the amounts provided by the town 3-to-1. So for every dollar that we put in, they put in 3. It's also expected that the county will also submit funds as well. And so it's expected that we'll have even more than $200,000 in order to incentivize businesses to move into this Rhizome and to stay in this Rhizome. Are there any questions about this program?
I'm not seeing any indications thereof from the council. Are there public questions or comments on this program? Seeing none, and since we have a motion on the floor, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor?
I forgot about
Yes.
me again.
No, I skipped him, but I was going to come back. You want me to do Councilmember Foe first, Councilmember Lingua?
Why mess with tradition, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an introduction of an ordinance. So there'll be no motion here. Introduction of ordinance 2022-OR-06 regarding mandatory changes to the ethics ordinance, mandatory provided from the state of Maryland. Would someone like to introduce this ordinance?
Okay. Sure. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce ordinance 2022-OR-06. This is an ordinance regarding changes to our ethics ordinance, and it's for the purpose of making revisions to the town's ethics ordinance, of which there will be numerous revisions as required by the state ethics law, and that they're generally relating to the revisions within the town of Riverdale Parks Code of Ethics. Doing so by repealing and enacting with amendments, Chapter 32, Code of Ethics, Section 32-4H3, 32-4I, 32-5D2, 32-5F4(1) or I, and 32-5G2. And that's from the Code of the Town of Riverdale Park, the January 2008 revision as supplemented. And we'll be adding a couple items, Chapter 32 Code of Ethics, 32-2A, 32-4L, 32-5J, and 32-5K. Again, to the Code of the Town of Riverdale Park, the January 2008 revision as supplemented.
Thank you for that introduction, Councilmember Lingwood. We can now move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is appointments to the Board of Elections. As you've read in the staff memo, the Board of Elections, which was created on April 19th formally, is comprised of the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Judges and 3 registered voters at least 18 years old and 1 registered voter under the age of 18 years old. Only recently have I received letters of interest from the 3 voters over the age of 18, and I am ready to nominate this evening if the council is ready for that, in the absence of the under 18-year-old, or we can defer to a later time. I would rather at this time to nominate the 3 voters who have expressed interest. Is there any objection to that from members of council?
I have none.
Okay, then let me read the names. Hearing none, I'll read the names of those I wish to nominate. The first is Patty Doyen, who lives at 6208 44th Avenue. The second is Jahera Otieno, who lives at 4504 Oliver Street. And the third is Heather Cronk, who lives at 6304 46th Avenue. Those are my nominees. May I please have a motion to approve the nominations to be members of the Board of Elections?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe to approve the nominations. Is there any discussion? Are there any public comments? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Other 2 council members are absent, as we've discussed. Okay, next item on the agenda is the redistricting committee update. As I hinted in my mayor's report, we had a very nice, very lively meeting in September, and I'm going to do my best to share my screen to show the current draft maps, which will be discussed at this message has popped up that has will be discussed at the next meeting. So where is the share screen? Go. There it is. So the software that I'm using is a piece of open source GIS software called QGIS. The screen sharing information hides some of the toolbars, so I just had to scrunch it down a little bit. So this map shows the current wards. Over here in magenta on the left-hand side is Ward 1. Light blue on the top is Ward 2. Ward 3 is in a darker cyan down here. Ward 4 in orange, Ward 5 in red, and Ward 6 in a dark blue here. So these are the existing wards, are at least pretty close to the existing wards. I think the exact shape, but a few of these is a little bit off, but I redrew these to follow the property lines. So I named various different maps just to be able to track them in my own head. It turns out that renaming them is a little bit harder than I thought, so some of them may have some funny names, but I'll go ahead and show you what the current drafts look like. One of them, which I titled 2020 Less Disruptive, is something that takes into account the additional population that's moved into the Riverdale Park Station, but seeks to sort of minimize the number of people who end up in a new ward. And so I can flip back and forth. I actually tried to make the colors between these two pretty consistent. So you can see that there's a bite taken out of existing Ward 1 that Ward 2 moves into. Ward 3 moves up to take some part of Ward 2, and Ward 4 expands a bit on the east side of the river. And Wards 5 and 6 maintain the same boundaries. They actually are within the required changes. So you can see those changes that are relatively modest changes, but they do introduce changes that are required in order to meet the ward population guidelines. The second set of changes I addressed by saying, well, let's see what happens. All these ward maps dating back to 2000 were driven by various council members requesting a particular shape of the ward based on communities of interest, things that they thought the residents were interested in being in the same ward. And those are typically driven by the single family homes. And so, or in the case of Ward 4, by the townhomes. So I said, let's see what happens if we start with the apartments. And of course, the apartments, the high density is in this area. And so the committee asked that I do some adjustments to the map based on that. But here we go. I will show you what they look like. These boundaries are a little bit rough. There are a little bit of jaggies here and there showing. So that shows Ward 4 showing through, but that's really not there. So where there's a boundary near the river, then the boundary is the river. And so, so you can see that, again, I can flip back and forth between them. The colors are not so consistent, but there are significant changes in this. And one of the goals that some members of the committee requested was that the townhomes in Riverdale Park Station be in the same ward as the townhomes in Madison Hill. And so that's why you see this ward stretching across the top northern part of the town. And you can see also that this ward, which is probably where the majority of the residents in current Ward 1 are, extends into where Ward 3 is. This, which is mostly Ward 2, extends down into Ward 3. These, there's apartment buildings that are there. And so this is a pretty high density ward here. It includes the census block that has the town hall and the school in it. Just to equalize out some numbers there, there are 35 residents there for reasons that I don't know that it's correct, but maybe they are. And then this, one thing that it does is it splits off Park Tanglewood from the other high-rise building. It's on 54th. Whose name I've forgotten for the moment. It's something like the. I'm sorry, I just can't remember. It was recently renamed, but it is no longer. Those two are no longer in the same ward. But the low-rise apartment buildings just to the south on 54th are there, and one building across. And in the old map, this building that creates the extension of Ward 4. There are a lot of residents there. It is now incorporated into this new red ward here. And then last but not least, the single families, most of the single families at least, that were previously in Ward 6 have now been pulled together with all these other single families and this ward here. So that is one option and so there's a different shape in this neighborhood previously, and this was a solution that I came up with that matched that. Another version of that, this was not requested by the committee, but I was on leave and so I had time, is this, which has some similar shapes down in this region. Ward 1 is no longer extending as far south as it was. Ward 3 is reasonably well preserved, extending up into this neighborhood. This is a very similar shape to what was in the so-called START apartments. And these, I think, are essentially the same between the two. Yeah, there's not, the only differences there are me not tracing out the boundaries perfectly. So those are the current drafts. And I just wanted to alert the council, and the committee is intending to ask for outreach to residents to come and comment on these possible maps at the next meeting. And of course, the council can attend. Councilmember Foe has attended several meetings, if not all of them. And but he has been very gracious to mostly listen and mostly poke him a little bit, and he might say something at that point. But we're trying to have this done where the committee will present multiple choices to the council, and the council can choose them or can ask for modest adjustments along the edges. Councilmember Smith, you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned on the map, the first map you showed that includes apartments.
This one?
Yes, that one. Moving the townhomes. What was the reason for having the townhomes on the far east or west side of the town being included with townhomes on the far west or east side? You get what I'm saying?
Yes. So there's an issue in the redistricting of having communities of interest. So you should try to group together people who want to advance particular goals to the town and allow them to speak through a council member. And so one of the committee members, we were discussing possible communities of interest, and one of them was just the style of home that people tended to live in. So the single families versus the high density apartments, and there's a discussion of whether the townhomes should have a mostly townhome ward. And of course, we can't have the wards, there's lots of geographic rules on how the wards can go. So we can't sort of loop around and pick up the townhouses down here. And so it was requested that I look at generating a map that had these townhomes connected with these townhomes because they share similar interests for parking and trash pickup and things like that. So that was the request from.
But those townhomes are already in a community of interest in Ward 1 with the townhomes south of Madison Street.
I understand that, and I believe that there are a lot more townhomes over here than there are over here. So that was just a request from a committee member, and kind of brought it forward. There's actually a map here that I'm not going to show you, which was a different map that the committee said that they weren't interested in taking that further forward, but it also includes those, includes all the townhomes in a single ward.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure why, like, we're still at the end of the day, between the current map and what this shows, like, there's still gonna be an island of townhomes that is not in a ward with other townhomes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not
And,
sure
and,
problem
you know,
that's-
right down here, there are some single families that are in a ward that's almost entirely apartments, and they can't be chopped out and meet the geographic requirements. And in the current wards, then, you know, this multifamily and that multifamily there, which are a large fraction of the population of that ward, are clumped together in with townhomes and with single families, and other parts of it. So it's their goals, and then there are the geographic realities that we have to meet that mean that you're not going to get a perfect answer.
Yeah, I understand that. It just seems like that reasoning is a bit arbitrary, but I'll be happy to attend the next meeting of the redistricting committee for some discussions about that.
Okay. And
Also
and
wondering if, sorry, go ahead.
do remember that that it's not going to be just one map that comes to the council. It's going to be at least 2 or 3 that come to you that the council can take as input and then adjust the edges if there are little issues that need to be addressed. Or the council can reject the recommendations entirely. But those are you're going to have, as my boss at my day job says, you're going to have a really big bite at this apple, a couple of really big bites at this apple later.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Just one other question. Were the residents of the apartments in Riverdale Park Station accounted for? Like, I heard you said one of these purposes was making sure to include apartment residents in other parts.
So that is a very unfortunate issue with the redistricting, which is that the date of population determination was April 1st, 2020. And the apartments were not occupied until a few months later, started being occupied a few months after that. And so that meant that they are not in the population counts at all. And so one of the other goals of the redistricting is to have whatever ward this is in have essentially the smallest population that it can legally have, because we know it has more residents in it now, and they're going to be even more over the next 10 years. And so that was one of the goals, and it's one of the reasons that, for instance, this one has sort of this funny shape through here, is that we're really trying to shave off as much population as I could to get this ward's population to be, the yellow ward, as low as possible.
Gotcha, understood. Just want to say thanks to you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Foe, and everyone on the redistricting committee. Thanks for the work on this. Look forward to having some spirited discussions about these boundaries. But yeah, thank you for the work. Thanks.
Of course. Councilmember Foe.
I just wanted to reiterate about the meetings of the committee. It's not what you think it is. Like there's only 4 of us that attend. I believe, attended all of them, Mr. Mayor. I think one I was just on Facebook. I tried.
You were there, we just didn't know it.
Yeah, no, I try my best not to offer any input on the maps. I am asked occasionally by members. This is their process, and I just wanted council to start paying attention to see what some of the ideas were. And as the mayor has made evidently clear, we get to choose this. I want to talk in those meetings, but I will ultimately have an opportunity to talk when it's brought to council. And that's why, I'm glad that we're looking at these maps now and talking about it and seeing it. Mr. Mayor, could you show least impact again? I feel like I haven't seen this, but I probably have.
You saw it at one of the meetings, I think at the September, whatever date that was, meeting. And so this
is
the-
predominantly
I
just
can-
moving, I'm sorry.
So this again, this ward has too high of a population with the 2020 numbers. The current ward is too high. And so the idea was, well, let's just try to carve this ward out to get its population down. And there are two places that we can do that. And one of them is crossing over here, and one of them is crossing over here, because there's a requirement that residents be able to walk from any location within a ward to any other location of ward without having to leave the ward. And so if for instance, we stuck a protuberance out and picked up this block here, then people who lived here would have to go through one of the other wards in order to get across the railroad tracks. I don't exactly know whether you're allowed to break the law in order to leave one ward to stay within your ward, but I was presuming that the fact that the railroad tracks are uncrossable was meant that we couldn't have the ward cross it except where people were allowed to cross it. So we have the over the tracks bridge here, we have the east-west highway bridge, and we have the whole interface of the town center here. Other than that, this particular barrier shouldn't be crossed. So I looked and said, well, this was sticking across the railroad tracks and a little bit uncomfortable. So let's try carving people, residents out of Ward 1 at that location. And so that's what happened. Ward 2, which was on the other side, extended in to where Ward 1 used to be. Then Ward 2 had too many people, so I collapsed down Ward 2 on that side and brought Ward 3 up to pick up the excess population there. When that happened, then there was again too much, well, I think I had Ward 3 extending and picking up this part of Ward 2 before. And so that had to be taken out. Ward 4 needed some extra population, so it slid down to fill that in. So again, you can see all of those changes, that it's basically just the ward boundary shifting driven by the higher population in Riverdale Park Station by carving out, moving the lines on the other side in order to make that work. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much.
Are there additional questions? Councilmember Lingua, I thought I saw your hand up at one point.
You did, Mr. Mayor, but you just answered my question, so thank you.
Okay. So that is the report, and it's an exciting time. And as I said, the committee would like to have as much outreach as possible to members of the public. If you have residents of your wards who you think would be interested in this, then please let them know that there's a meeting coming up. And I can probably generate PDF images of these maps and for distribution in case people want to take a look at them. And the other thing that I'll say is that the amount of data that is available in these maps, a lot of this data came from Parks and Planning, is just like really astonishing. So these little gaps in the lines here are actually the curb cuts. So the lines are the curb outlines, street outlines. So these are the center lines and those are the curbs. And where there's a curb cut, there's a gap. And so that to me is just amazing that there's that level of detail available. And other data that's was downloaded from the Department of Assessments and Taxation, and that has the location of each tax bill property, and I assigned a number of residents for each of those locations based on the census numbers. And so you can see, well, this is just whether it's a residence or not. The number of people is stored elsewhere, I think. No, that's further. Excuse me. It's going to show. Yeah, this is just whether it's a residence or not. No, there it is. So this, for instance, is the multi-family rooming house. So it has 12 residences there. This is the apartments over 250 Texas. And so it's very amazing how much information is available in these databases, and I look to do some interesting analysis with this data once the redistricting process is done. So that's the report. I will stop sharing unless there are questions. Any questions from members of the public? Mr. Town Manager, did you have a question?
Not on this item, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Mr. Mayor,
And we can, yes.
before we move on to the next unfinished business item, Ms. Barnes noticed that something may have been missed in the Board of Election appointments. And with your indulgence, sir, if she can explain to you what we missed.
Please. Please.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. I believe we would need to also appoint the chief and deputy chief election judge at the same time. Their terms are typically 2 years, so they'll be coming up very soon to expire. And as part of the Board of Elections, I believe they'll need to be appointed at that same time with the rest of the members.
So do they need to be appointed this evening?
Certainly,
Or
that's
do
up
they
to
need
you.
to have their, I guess the question is, are their terms as chief and deputy chief election judge nearing the end? Because it seems that they have membership on this committee without being appointed just based on their positions. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
no, that was my question.
Okay. There's simply 2 members of the Board of Elections with special titles. And the reason we did that was so that in this transition year, as the Board of Elections is being established, there aren't as many code changes that will need to be made to move forward. So I do believe they need to be appointed at this time just for consistency and clarity's sake.
Okay, but they will, as being appointed as members of this commission, they will also be reappointed as chief election judge and deputy chief election judge.
It all happens at the same time.
Okay, that was my question. So thank you for the clear answer. I appreciate that. So let's see. We need to. And this is the time that I don't have my rules of order with me. That's something I forgot to pack before coming up here. So we need to revisit a question previously decided. So can I have a motion to revisit legislative action item 4, a motion regarding appointments for the Board of Elections?
So moved.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to revisit legislative action item number 4.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Smith to revisit item 4. Is there any discussion of this motion? This is a formal rules of order motion, just to keep from rediscussing items time after time. So this is sort of a formality, and once we pass this, then we will be back into discussing. I'm stretching a little bit here. I really wish I had my rules of order. Actually, can both of you just retract? Would you be willing to retract that motion?
Yes.
I think there's a cleaner way to do this. Okay, the motion has been, motion and second have been retracted. I believe we could just have a separate motion.
Point of order,
To
Mr.
appoint, yes,
Being that right now we are in, unless we're finished now discussing the work of the redistricting committee,
yes.
what we could do regards to the agenda is essentially, because we're at a point right now, we're just about to start talking about the residential permit parking program.
Are you
So-
suggesting putting this off till new business?
I was thinking we could do it do it under new business,
Or at the end of unfinished business?
or at the end of, well, it is technically unfinished business. So we could do it after that.
Okay, why don't we do it at the end of unfinished business? And we can add it at that time. Okay,
Right.
so let's you're calling for the orders of the day, and that's fine. So we'll move on to unfinished business item 2, residential permit parking program.
And I'm going to ask the Director Barnes provide this update. Jessica?
Certainly. Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. We're here tonight to provide an update on the final community meeting regarding residential permit parking. We've had 3 meetings altogether. The first 2 were during the summer, and we went over the feedback that we received at that time. We had a great discussion with Riverdale Park Station residents, and a lively discussion that actually resulted in some excellent input and feedback, both at the meeting and then after the meeting by email. I just wanted to go over a few of those items, just so we had a point of reference, and then to talk a little bit about our proposed schedule for addressing residential permit parking. So one of the main topics that was discussed during the meeting with the Riverdale Park Station residents was concerns regarding how or if the apartment building should be included in the permit parking program, and noting that there is planned a second apartment building. It was noted that there were 109 townhomes and 225 apartments. That number was just a little bit off. I think it's actually 229. It was noted that the apartment building had a dedicated garage, but residents of the apartment had to actually pay for the garage. It was also noted that townhomes have at least a 1-car garage, and between 8 and 10 of the townhomes have actually dual-car garages. The residents were very focused on equity and fair treatment, regardless of the type of housing that you lived in. The discussion surrounded 4 permits per residence being too much in Riverdale Park Station, and the consensus was that 2 parking permits per residence was preferred. There were some questions of whether parking permits were actually needed, and that was a resounding yes. Yes, there was going to be a need for residential permit parking in some fashion. There were some concerns about the nature of some of the streets within the development. Not every street had ample on-street parking. There was also significant discussion about the use of on-street parking by those who don't live in the community. So those who are using the retail areas, the metro, the trail, and the tot lot. There was some discussion about the 2-hour parking permit program that they have in the city of Hyattsville and how that would relate to Riverdale Park Station. There was a concern about needing to be able to attract and keep businesses in the neighborhood. There were some concerns about parking for extended periods of time, which we all know is addressed in the town code, so that'll be an enforcement item. There was one request to take the parking spaces in front of the townhome and mark them with the address or the street markers of the townhomes. So really assigning parking spaces to the townhomes. I think that's a throwback to when the development first came into play, and there were some questions about how the parking worked. There was some concern, of course, about the loss of on-street parking due to construction. The plans, again, that I mentioned of the additional parking or additional apartment building, and overall need for enforcement of permit parking areas. I think that's pretty consistent in all of our discussions. So after the meeting, the staff did some gathering of some additional information, and we just wanted to share that with the council tonight. For clarity, the parking garage is not owned by the apartment complex. It's owned by the developer, who has allowed the apartment complex to offer paid parking to their residents. There are 229 apartments, with 96% of them occupied. Of those occupied apartments, approximately 60% use the parking garage. The fees are $45 a month for rooftop parking and $75 a month for garage parking. There is a parking lot free to use directly in front of the apartment building. Those who wish not to pay for parking either park there or on the street. There's a number of residents who also do not own a vehicle. There are designated levels for free parking in the garage for the shopping center, and there are no foreseeable plans to charge for parking for shoppers. Towing in the garage at this time is not enforced, and there's no option for the townhome owners to use the garages. So that provided a little bit of clarity and gave us some more information to, I guess, really clarify the comments that were raised, or the concerns that were raised by residents. So outside of this, we did receive some input about 2 other areas in town that were requested to be included in the permit parking program. That was Oglethorpe between Taylor Road and Riverside Drive. And I think I mentioned in one of our first community meetings, we had some expansion of parking onto the 5400 block of Powhatan Street, so permit parking there. So we've done our outreach, we've collected a lot of information, and clearly a one-size-fits-all approach is not going to work for the dynamics that we have within our neighborhoods. So we need to determine how the council needs to let us know how they want the permit parking program to operate. If there's anything specific that staff should consider. The proposed timeline as it stands now, and just if you could recall, the current parking permits expire at the end of the calendar year. So we're in a little bit of a tight time frame here. So tonight would be just a discussion again with the mayor and council, another opportunity to provide, receive feedback with perhaps at the October 31st work session, having some draft legislation that we could talk about. And then on November the 7th, holding a public hearing, which is required by the town code. Then November 21st, if there was a special legislative meeting scheduled, we could introduce the legislation at that time, with adoption scheduled for December the 5th, and then the effective date on December the 25th. And that would get us right into the time frame where we'd have something in place before the end of the calendar year.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Council members. Discussion, thoughts? I have a question. I was a little bit confused about exactly what's going on with the current apartment dwellers, and you said there was some free parking, which I thought was associated with the shopping, but some of them are using it. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I believe a member of our police department, Ms. Davis, did the outreach to the apartment building, and that was the information that was provided at that time. There must be a small parking area that apartment dwellers can use. It must not be large enough to really obviously accommodate everybody who'd want to utilize the free parking.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Councilmember Lingua, any thoughts on Oglethorpe between Taylor and the river? Is that the location? Is that the correct location?
Certainly.
Councilmember Lingua is not, I can't hear him or see him. I wonder if he's lost his internet connection. Which would, given that Councilmember Mejia has left, would give us not quite a quorum. So let's continue discussing and hope that he just can't get through at this time. Councilmember Smith, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just glad to see this moving forward. Happy to do whatever I can to help move it forward. I know this is a common issue in Riverdale Park Station. I think it will help some of the other traffic safety concerns around there as well. If you don't have a bunch of folks that aren't residents cruising around through the streets looking for parking spaces, not paying attention to sidewalks and things like that. I am concerned with the number of permits. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I feel like even at 2 per household, I know we had a presentation previously that noted that the number of parking spaces in the development there, if we gave 2 to every house, it would significantly outnumber the amount of available spaces. Has there been any discussion around that impact?
There has been, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jessica. I'll go after you.
Certainly. There has been some discussion. In fact, I believe I misspoke at one of our previous public meetings in saying that, oh, we'd only issue the number of permits as the streets would allow. But remembering that people come and go in parking spots, we don't want spots to be open when there's somebody else who can use them. So there's no magic that I'm aware of, or no formula that I'm aware of, but I do think that that's something we need to take into consideration, not going too far ahead of what we have available, but also recognizing that some folks don't drive. Some folks will not have cars. Some folks will have 2 cars. Some will have 3. Some will have 1. So there's a ton of variables in place that make it a little difficult to really move forward with a number in mind, an exact number.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't know, the math is the math. Maybe it's something where we can ask nicely and encourage the residents there that if you have a garage, please keep your car in it instead of on the street. I know we have a similar issue in my development. And it's actually, our roads are still private, and our HOA bylaws say that nobody's ever done it, but if you are parking on the street and it's found that your garage does not contain a car, you can lose your street parking privileges. There are people that are doing that, like nobody's ever moved to take action on it. But it's just something to think about what we can do to help those residents understand that, we want to make it easy for them to park, make it safe for their streets. But, if you're using your garage for storage and parking on the street, you're taking space from your neighbors that they could be using. So yeah, that's just my thought on it. Oh, I had
Mr.
one.
Town Manager.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Town Manager, did you have an answer to Mr. Smith's initial?
No, I think Director Barnes covered that.
Okay. Correct. Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, and just this doesn't apply to the immediate need here that needs to get done by the end of the year, but I would just note the influx of rental units, multifamily housing coming in toward one, particularly on Madison Street, and probably the west side coming into town center over there. We'll probably be revisiting this again for those areas, I'm assuming. I know for the development in the chamber space, the proposed development, they were actually counting the existing street spaces towards the number of spaces they have to provide for code reasons to residents. And I was very clear with them that those spaces are already occupied. They're not during the day because people are at work, but I've had to park halfway to Town Center Market because they're all taken there. A lot of times folks park there when the parking lot fills up at DeMatha for basketball games and things. So yeah, we'll just have to be mindful for that and revisit as we develop and grow more.
I'm going to weigh in on the number of parking spaces. I don't remember the exact number, but it is above 900 housing units in Riverdale Park Station, and there's nowhere close to 1,800 parking spaces on the streets up there, which is how many you would issue if it was 2 per dwelling unit. And so it is, as Councilmember Smith said, the demand is significantly higher. Potential demand is significantly higher than the supply.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Foe, you had a comment or question.
No, I want to apologize to everyone. I diagnosed attention deficit. So as we entered into this dialogue, I was still thinking about redistricting. We're talking about Riverdale Park Station. And I believe you were talking about the pilot house having no assigned parking in their utilization of the parking garage. Is that correct?
Well, it's part of if you rent an apartment, you can purchase a parking spot.
$45 for the top and $75 for protected, right? So that's part of the fee. Do all of the townhomes have parking garages?
So that was what was interesting to me. I found that all of them have garages, and a very small number, actually have garages for 2 cars, which I had never seen before. So that was news to me. But there are garages
for 1 car.
Yep.
Okay.
And you had a variety of issues that came up during the community meeting. I mean, some folks, they chose to live in Riverdale Park Station because of its proximity to transportation options. And then other folks have, their lifestyles have changed and they need 2 cars. And so there were just a lot of different things that came up. But I do have to say, I was so impressed by the community meeting in Riverdale Park Station. The focus on equity and doing what was right for the whole neighborhood, I thought was really remarkable. So I do believe there can be some sort of working together, but we have to remember that things change. People move and new folks come in. So we need a fair process that's equitable for all residents.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I can remember attending Mayor Thompson at an event at Denizens, a listening session, and a lot of the discussion was about parking. And at a certain point, there has to be a dialogue about high density living and what that looks like and what some of the struggles are and everything like that. And I feel like sometimes and I don't deal with these issues because I'm not a Ward 1 representative. I feel like that's not taken into account as part of these dialogues. And I don't know how we legislate that sometimes. It's confusing. And I just wanted to make sure that I was hearing correctly what the issues were. So thank you.
And I think that's probably the biggest, this is the time to have this discussion. One size fits all just doesn't work anymore. Our neighborhoods look different. We don't know when the roads will necessarily be transferred to the town, but we know it's happening and we know it'll be happening in the near future. So it's the time to have these discussions. And Councilman Foe, when you talked about, the different issues in different wards, well, we're talking about redistricting. So it's a town-wide issue, and parking is kind of one of those quality of life issues. People get very frustrated if they don't have a place to park or they have to park far away from their homes. So it's a high emotion issue sometimes, but I have to say our residents really came through and gave a lot of really constructive and important input. So that was really great.
That is great. Glad to hear it. Okay, so is there any more discussion, and does staff feel like they have enough direction from the council to move forward at this time?
Certainly.
Okay, are there any public comments? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the next item of unfinished business, blighted properties legislation.
Yes, good evening again, Mayor and Council. We spoke a little bit about blight properties and vacant properties the last meeting in September. We spoke about what the town code currently states about our blighted and vacant properties, the current efforts of neighborhood services, some public safety concerns, ownership difficulties, and some of the staff's recommendations. I'd like to mention that there was a public safety concern on the night of September 27th, I believe, at the Riverside Drive property, which we had mentioned before, and as that's this property here, and as that property was posing an imminent danger for our safety officers, Public Works was tasked with going out and clearing off the property and securing it, making sure that the danger had been mitigated as much as possible in the short-term future. And we have begun speaking with the owner of this property about their long-term solution for making sure that it's no longer a danger to our safety officers. So yes, back to what we spoke about last meeting. We spoke about some suggestions that the staff had for how to address vacant and blighted properties. Staff suggested limiting the amount of time that a property can be secured with lumber. So the boarding that was covering the windows and the doors on that Riverside Drive property, the staff suggestion is for that to only be allowed for a period not to exceed 6 months when approved by the code official. We also spoke about bamboo growth and prohibiting it from growing without proper upkeep. I know that in this Riverside Drive photo, it's very easy to tell that the bamboo grows very quickly and in a very thick manner close to the house, and I knew that it was quite hard work for our Public Works Department in order to cut it back. And this amended section that would add bamboo to our town code would help keep the bamboo from encroaching on others' properties and putting them in the same difficulty and same hardship that our Public Works is going through when addressing this property. We also spoke about a vacant building registration program, and my favorite component of this program is not only having ownership contact information for the vacant properties, allowing us to contact them quickly and directly when there's an issue, but also requiring vacant property owners to submit a plan for their future plans for those blighted and vacant properties so that we may know what to expect in the future. I'd like to take some time to see what else that the mayor and council would like to see in order to address blighted and vacant properties. If there's something that the mayor and council have noticed about vacant properties that they'd like to see addressed, with that, whatever that may be, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that in your direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chilton. Councilmember Foe.
Ryan, I'm gonna look into some ideas and suggestions. So I don't have anything right off the top of my head. Do you have a guesstimate potentially as how many vacant buildings we have across town?
It's at least 6. I want to say it was closer to 8 or 9.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional council questions? Councilmember Lingua, are you
Yeah,
back? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have sort of one technical comment, which is about the proposed bamboo. And that is that in a lot of locations currently, there's an obvious source of the bamboo that one house was probably the first place that had it planted, but there are multiple lots onto which it is expanding. And so there needs to be some thought as to how that particular situation will be dealt with. Well, everywhere that has bamboo on it right now need to ensure that it doesn't sneak back onto somebody else's lot should the other person remove it, or how is that going to work? And that's just a technical question.
I think that's a good question, and we will certainly provide a possible solution to that at the next meeting.
Okay. Additional council comments, thoughts?
Sounds like a question from somebody who's had bamboo grow from their property onto other people's property, Mr. Mayor.
Just the opposite, actually. I spent one summer digging out bamboo by the roots from the edge of my property, and I spent the entire summer out there with a fireman's axe, chopping up, digging it up, carefully putting the bamboo roots in the middle of the road in the middle of the summer so they would cook and not possibly ever germinate again. So
see, that's
why I'm saying,
that's a picture the town should
battle.
have. You with the fireman's axe. I would love to see that image. We can make a calendar.
Okay, well, I still have the axe. Still have the axe. It needs to be sharpened.
Don't tempt me. You know I'll text Sarah.
Okay, so I'm not sure she got any pictures of it or not, but it's possible. Okay, I think we are done with that discussion item, unless there are any public comments. Okay, let's move on to unfinished business item 4, VO-RIDE agreement.
Oh, yes, good evening again. I've taken the mayor and council's recommendations, and I've gone back and spoken with staff at VO-RIDE, and they have been much more amenable lately than they have in the past. I asked the VO-RIDE staff about whether or not they'd be open to broadening their area for where VO-RIDE would be acceptable and installing new stations, and they said they would be more than happy to establish new areas if that was the mayor and council's desire. I also asked VO-RIDE about any subsidized programs. The Capital Bike Share has a program that benefits residents which are already on assistance programs. I believe it's either the federal and state levels, but it might be it might include other levels as well. And VO-RIDE does have a similar program. They have a subsidized program. I believe it's called VO-RIDE Access. That would provide for $5 a month access members to have all unlocked fees waived and receive one free 30-minute ride per day with just 20 cents per minute after that. And they'd be able to provide promotional materials for this for town residents. I thought that was an important item to include because that potentially broadens where we may want to have VO-RIDE establish new stations or allow ridership. So I'm interested in understanding the direction from the mayor and council on how to continue our relationship with ViaRide and your input. Thank you.
Council members, discussion?
You know, the more I thought of this, the more I keep thinking when it comes to companies like this that want to do non-stationed bikes, like Capital Bike Share does. You know, it almost seems just like instead of entering into separate agreements with each company, it's almost for this, like, we need to establish locations throughout the town. Where if you had, say, a ViaRide, or you had a Lime, or you had, you know, any other type of vehicle, that this was where you need this was this, and you were using it and you're trying to go from point A to point B, in a general area, that this is where you would need to leave the bike, the scooter, the GoPed, whatever type of vehicle it is, or transport that it is. So in a sense, then, if someone wants to come in, we have something already set up, and it's just a matter of setting up whatever agreement that we would have already established. It's essentially, here's the paperwork, you know, if you're okay with these terms, you would be able to, you'd be able to come into the town and be able to conduct business within the town. That's where my thinking has been taking me on these past few weeks, because once we do this for ViaRide, are we then going to go back and do something for someone else wants to come in, and then we're starting all over again? I mean, as much as,
So your suggestion is to
Go
have
ahead.
a model agreement. Your suggestion is to have some form of model agreement and say, yeah, this location is where your vehicles must be left, and these are locations where there are potentially different speed limits for the vehicles, and different areas where they're going to be operated, and that those are going to be generic places that we think will work for any future vendor that would come forward. And so we could start with a model agreement, or with a chapter of the code that regulates this, and then they would enter into agreement that was compliant with those established standards.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So that way someone comes in, gosh, what do we need to do in Riverdale Park? Oh, okay, here's what they have set up. Here's their structure. Looks good to us. Great, let's grab the paperwork. Let's, whatever fees they would need to pay. Go from there. Otherwise it's like we're getting into this whole thing where we're figuring out where ViaRide can go, and then like Lime wants to come in and they want to figure out where they want to go. It's like, no, let's just have something where if you're a company, you have this. Here are locations where your bicycle, you're trying to find a general term to describe these things. Being a lot of these
it's
now
generally called micro mobility.
Your micro mobility device vehicle whatever you want to call it. This is where they need, this is where they would need to be returned. And we have them set up that way. It's at some point, we could have varied locations, but that way they're set up to where in places that where it's not going to be obstructing public right of ways for other folks using public right of ways in town and in town open space. It may be something where you have locations that are on the properties of the apartment buildings.
Right, well,
But you see what I mean? It's just like,
Mhm.
we're just not opening up all our public space to saying, oh, you can just leave them wherever.
Sure.
We'll have numerous places, but it's organized.
So there are other aspects of the agreement. I understand this particular point in terms of where the vehicles can be left, but and for that matter picked up. But there are other aspects that include any geofences for where they can and can't go, any speed zones,
Right.
any access for lower socioeconomic status residents of town. And so perhaps we can just have staff present a generic sort of agreement and see if that looks reasonable, and see if there are any aspects that are missing.
Okay. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. We don't want to, this is enough of a sort of commoditized business that we want to make sure that we're not having, the council wrestle with a new version of each of these agreements. The one thing I'll say is that
Exactly.
we already have an established agreement with, Capital Bike Share,
Yeah.
which is a very different business because they have the docks.
Right.
And so we may need to think about whether we want to incorporate that into the same master agreement or not, because that seems like, since we basically are loaning them real estate, town-owned real estate to have their docks, then that's a different matter. And the other question is whether we want to regulate at all them having agreements with private property owners. So I mentioned there's some car sharing business, and I can't remember their name, many years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there was a small apartment building that had like
Queensbury.
6 parking spots or something like that. Excuse me?
Yeah, it was on Queensbury. They had spots in the back there.
Right. And so, do we want to regulate something similar if VoRide or LimeWire or whoever else wanted to enter an agreement with private property owners to set up a drop-off location? So, Director Chilton, do you think that that's enough direction that you can bring us a model agreement or a draft piece of legislation for how to manage this?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Councilmember
Chilton,
Foe,
does this make sense to you?
Yes.
In the sense of trying to inventing, sorry for the, bad euphemism, but, inventing the wheel once, so to speak,
It's funny.
as opposed to like trying to reinvent it
Councilman.
every time someone comes in and wants to, allow their dockless vehicles in the public right of way.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please do, but Councilmember Foe is waiting to
Oh.
speak also. I mean, I
I'll
think
pause.
that Councilmember Foe?
This is only through text, so I don't have a incredible understanding, but it's my understanding that College Park Councilmember Lingua is doing something very similar. On campus, they can only be parked at bike racks or specific scooter pads parking spots. And currently the council is now in the process of designating areas, but we don't operate in the same budget that College Park does. So they're talking about potentially new bike racks and pads for the placement, but I think that is in line with your thinking as well, where staff and council are working on locations for these things. So I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm also considering is like folks who have their own bicycles, or they have their own, they own their own bicycle, GoPed, whatever, electric bike, that are privately owned. And again, that can be a confusing term because VeoRide's a private company, and that is a privately owned vehicle, but essentially personal probably is a better term. People have their own personal bicycles, scooters, GoPeds, whatever you want to call them, depending what what they own. And you see, we in town, and you're seeing in other places how there are bike racks set up for the specific purpose of, you want to go somewhere in town, you want to be able to lock your bike up to somewhere, you can be able to do that. And to be trying to go somewhere and you get there and there's like 4 VeoRides taking up a bike rack, I want us to be able to avoid that by having specific locations that these are returned to.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I might just add on to what Councilmember Foe said, to take a little step further, that if understanding that College Park has a bigger budget than we do, I think it would be a good practice that if anybody, to be clear, I support bringing more non-car transportation options into the town. But if there is any sort of infrastructure that is needed for them to make money on our town's public property, I think they should pay for that. That should be in part of what other model agreement we come to.
Well, they would need a business license to operate in town. And business licenses, sometimes, there are fees attached to business licenses, so.
So one other slight complication is that some of these micro mobility people, businesses will rent a vehicle to a person for, on a month-by-month basis. So rather than you pick up whichever bike and ride it somewhere and put it back down, then you're actually renting it on a month-by-month basis from VeoRide. And so we need to make sure that that is also incorporated in the model agreement. Because that's sort of like somebody owning their own bike, but it will be technically be a VeoRide owned bike. Just a thought.
Yeah, but that's kind of sort of a different arrangement. I mean, it's like you go to Enterprise and you rent a car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that arrangement that you have with Enterprise and renting a car, be it for however many days you have it, is different from, say, the arrangement that you had with the car, for lack of a better term, the car timeshare company.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I need a car for 2 hours on Saturday so I can go run some errands. And they have a location over here where I can pick up a car and drop off the car. I think it was Smart Car.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Sounds right.
you see what I mean? There's,
Something like that.
it's kind of,
Yes,
there's,
it's a different arrangement, but in the case of those vehicles, then the company only did the very short-term rentals. And in this case, same company, same labeled, perhaps the same exact vehicles, but they were renting it to somebody for a month at a time. And so
Right.
that person would, park it outside their house, and they would write it somewhere, and it'd be more like the enterprise deal. And so we have to
right.
figure out how to incorporate that wrinkle into our agreement.
Well, it's probably, well.
So I
I think it's a matter of like figuring out,
Director
understanding
Tilton.
how, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was sort of a suggestion to Director Tilton for
Okay.
incorporating into the agreement he brings to us. I don't think we need to, discuss this at length tonight.
No, I don't think we do.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Any public comments? Okay. Let me flip over and look at the agenda. This is where we were going to
You're gonna come back.
bring back. Yes. So my recommendation here is that I would like to nominate for the position of Chief Election Judge Sarah Zolad and Deputy Chief Kate Kelly. And I would like a motion to approve those nominations to those memberships on the Board of Elections.
So moved. Oh, I was beaten.
I think you had that one.
Second.
I'll give it to Councilmember Smith as a motion and seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to thank both of them for doing the job. They're tremendous and they work hard for us in this town.
Absolutely agree.
Indeed.
Any public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia had to leave us in order to get ready for, be ready for work tomorrow morning. I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. Any other items of unfinished business? Any items of new business?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
recognizing the time, I will be as quick as possible. Councilmember Stuart Adams reached out to you and I potentially about supporting or advocating on behalf of legislative initiatives coming into our winter legislative session at the state level concerning advocacy behind enabling automated noise measurements as evidence in court for vehicles and property noise violations. I imagine at some point we will have a dialogue at a future meeting about legislative priorities that we would like to reach out to District 22 about. And I would just ask that at some future meeting, whether it be a work session or a legislative session, that we discuss this potentially to see that it has council support. If it does, then we could move it forward in part of our communication to District 22 leaders.
So this is basically automated noise ordinance enforcement.
Yeah. I just, living where we live, it just seems to go through without any enforcement of anything at all. And it's disruptive to the environment. I'd just like to to have a dialogue about it, even if it doesn't come to fruition.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Staff, can we get that on a future agenda? It's just something to discuss and conceptually, and then be ready for the legislative session.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, any other items of new business? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Lingua to adjourn. This motion is neither debated nor discussed. Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 3-0-1. We are adjourned at 11:02 p.m. Thank you very much to staff and council for a fantastic meeting. Had a lot
Thank you,
of
everyone.
good discussion.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good